Chapter 321, The Real Dragon Ball God Tree. King Kai's creative power. Axis inhaled and let his aura envelop the Emperor's divine psychic power, guiding and harmonizing it. That icy order softened, the fervent will of judgment fell away, leaving only the purest, impartial, immense sacred energy. Axis directed this purified divine power into the earth, merging it with the torrent of energy already present. Between the four of them, they barely supplied what the tree required. Khorne's chaotic divine power and the Emperor's orderly, human hope-driven divinity, forces that should have been utterly incompatible and capable of tearing reality apart, were forcibly transformed and harmonized by Aisha and Axis, two beings with unique chi and formidable life energy. Acting as purifiers and tuners, they melded the chaos and order into an unprecedented, vast primordial divinity. The result combined chaotic force with the Emperor's stabilizing psychic power and contained the immeasurable essences of the two supreme beings. Fed by that terrifying synthesis, the walnut-sized seed buried deep beneath the surface finally stopped ravenously devouring the planet's life force and instead began to pulse, like an ancient heartbeat. The sound did not travel through air but struck the fabric of space itself. Each beat sent a ripple through the webway, as if the seed's longing to emerge could shake the boundary between reality and illusion. "It's done," Axis's eyes flashed. He could feel the accumulation inside the seed reach a critical point. It had shifted from bottomless consumption to a buildup ready to erupt. "Now, Axis, let it out!" Khorne's giant face bellowed. He sensed the birth of a tree of God, pregnant with order and chaos, life and destruction. Axis nodded, and drawing on his most primal chi, worked with Aisha to force the tree through the soil. Boom! Rumble! The life god star convulsed. It wasn't an earthquake so much as the planet's entire structure groaning and reconfiguring. Near the equator, the crust tore apart as though gripped by an invisible hand, a rift valley thousands of kilometers long ripping open. From its depths, a multicolored light poured, and at the center of that maelstrom, an emerald point pierced the chaos, a delicate sprout. The moment it appeared, an indescribable pressure washed across the webway. Khorne's blood-red visage and the Emperor's golden countenance both froze. Aisha felt something stir deep in her soul, a resonance, as if the very essence of life had been called by a higher existence. Axis felt it too. This life tree had been planted by them together. They were bound to it. The sprout erupted into growth, visibly expanding with terrifying speed. It was no longer a twisted, vine-like mental construct. It became an ancient, majestic, sacred tree. Its trunk was as broad as a mountain range, the bark woven with dark gold and emerald green, like a solidified galaxy threaded with the veins of life. Its roots thrust into the warped sea of energy, greedily drinking the nourishment the four supreme beings provided, anchoring into the life god star itself and into the fabric of the webway. The crown shot upward so fast it pierced the planet's thin atmosphere and extended into the webway's hazy, shifting rainbow void. Massive branches unfurled. Each leaf was like a star carved from emerald, with liquid gold light and crimson energy running along their veins. The lush canopy intertwined within the webway, covering nearly half the life god star's sky and emitting an intertwined glow of divine order and violent chaos. Divine tree. This was no longer a mere mental construct. This was a true divine tree, nurtured by godly power on a godly world. Its presence made even the warp tremble. "It's a success! Ha! A true divine tree!" Axis laughed heartily. The pure energy pouring from the tree quickly replenished the vast chi he had expended. He felt it restore and even enhance him. The tree was bound to his bloodline, a miracle he had helped create. Aisha stared up at the colossal arboreal colossus, intoxicated by the life essence and law fluctuations radiating from it. The power to create planets and nurture life, things she had only ever heard of, no longer felt so distant. Working with Axis to plant this tree had shown her a creative power that transcended life itself. Was this the world king god power her father had spoken of? She felt both an independent life within the tree and an extension of her own power. Axis sensed a divine aura. The tree would need 10,000 years to bloom and bear fruit. In the meantime, its roots, anchored in the webway, would continuously absorb warp energy and convert it into the nutrients the tree required. "Ha ha! Good, good!" Khorne roared 3 times, his blood-red face twisted with glee. What a perfect tree of God. Axis, your promise is fulfilled. Its fruit will hold incredible power. I'm eager to taste it. Indeed, the tree surpassed all earthly treasures Khorne had ever seen. Only something of this caliber merited the Chaos God's power. It was the key to breaking through his current bottleneck among the Chaos Gods. The Emperor's golden face remained still, his cold eyes fixed on the divine tree as if calculating. Its fruit, if it should fully mature, could free him from the golden throne. The tree was true hope. The Emperor transmitted a thought to Axis. Axis, the divine tree you promised has not disappointed. I have a premonition. If this tree spans its growth and bears fruit, if I eat of it, I will be fully restored. Of course, the tree is soul-bound to me, but it will take 10,000 years to bear fruit, and it needs a massive amount of energy, Axis replied. He could already perceive the tree's fluctuations. He and the tree shared a miraculous connection. The time was long, but for God's time is cheap. A 10,000-year cycle was acceptable. Axis could wait. I will protect the tree and continuously supply it with warp energy, the Emperor said. He needed the fruit to rise from the golden throne and to be made whole. Axis needed the fruit to break through as well. Together they had a chance to defeat the Dark King. The Emperor's gaze flicked to Khorne. The Dark King was an enemy of all. Khorne could be enlisted to help. If three beings who had consumed the fruit of God stood together, the Emperor believed they would have over an 80% chance of overcoming the Dark King. For the first time in a long while, the future did not seem entirely draped in darkness. Still, an uneasy feeling lingered in the Emperor's heart. Would the Dark King surrender so easily? It seems I'll have to stay here a long time, Aisha said. The divine tree, rooted on her life planet, could absorb and convert some warp energy on its own, but Khorne's chaos-infused power had to be processed by her. I'll help you convert it. You're not the only one bound to the job, Axis said. He couldn't leave either. He was responsible for converting the Emperor's divine power as well. It was good, he thought. The work would let him study Khorne's chaos god power, Aisha's world king god-level life power, and the Emperor's sacred divinity simultaneously. Becoming a Super Saiyan god was now within reach. You can bring your wife over, father, but I won't call her mother, Aisha added. She would acknowledge one father. She wouldn't accept another mother. Ha ha, Kasha wouldn't accept you as her daughter either, Axis replied. Nurturing the divine tree benefits your planet too. You can feel it. This world is evolving to a higher level because of the tree. That planet had been an ordinary world, abandoned by the Eldar, and Aisha's domain had turned it into a life god star. The divine tree would feed the planet, steering it toward becoming a world king god star, or even the kind of world where a god of destruction might dwell. Despite its name, a god of destruction star still contains vast life energy. Gods of destruction are not creators. Their worlds, like the world king god's planets, are crafted by the world king god. Aisha nodded. The growth of the tree meant the evolution of her world and of herself into a true world king god. I'll return to the Golden Throne now, Axis. Sanguinius still needs to establish the national religion. You don't need to worry about that. Stay here and watch over the divine tree, the Emperor said. Setting up a national faith was a small matter Axis couldn't help much with. No problem. I'll take a long vacation, Axis said with a grin, and the three of them, God, Godling, and Demon, left the newly rising divine tree to take root and grow through the ages. Chapter 322, The Establishment of the State Religion. 300 years passed in a flash. Axis, the roots of this tree of God, have already reached into the warp. It's drawing a vast amount of warp energy every moment. We must put a chaos barrier around it so the other three gods don't discover my secret, Khorne said. Besides consuming his own divine power, the tree also pulled energy from the surrounding space. That made it obvious to any watching god. The tree was vital to the Emperor, to Khorne, and to Axis. It could not be exposed to the other chaos gods. I'll raise a psychic veil and cast an illusion that I'm the one drawing warp energy, the Emperor replied. Khorne's barrier alone wasn't enough. The Emperor's added measures would make the deception more convincing, leading the other gods to believe it was the Emperor who was siphoning the energy. Khorne, you could station your daemon legions here, and the Emperor could send his cursed legions. Let them wage war. That would hide our work even better, Axis suggested. That's tempting. I can send my legions at any time. Axis, you can join too. Let your gene seed offspring clash with my daemons. It'll be glorious, Khorne said, visibly delighted. He loved war above all. No, the Emperor vetoed. We mustn't make it too blatant. A large-scale battle here would draw unwanted attention from the other evil gods. He was right. Staging a major conflict would be more likely to bring prying eyes than to conceal anything. Worse, the Emperor's cursed legions were formed from the souls of human heroes. They were precious and would not be squandered in a ruse of needless carnage. Khorne might enjoy it, but the Emperor would not risk his forces for spectacle. Axis agreed with the Emperor. Very well. Khorne left first. Axis watched him and the Emperor depart, then remained on the Life God star to tend the tree with Aisha. Kasha soon moved in with them. Kratos and Karn came to visit one by one. When they learned that their father, the Gene Father, could not leave, they swore their loyalty. Father, I will not fail you, Kratos vowed. Great Gene Father, the Golden Legion will make your name thunder across the galaxy. We are the heirs of the Golden Bloodline, Karn declared, both striking their chests with solemn pride. Axis nodded. I trust you, my sons. Don't worry, I'm not trapped forever. I can go out for periods of time. If necessary, the Emperor could interrupt the flow of warp energy, and I could leave. Besides, the Life Goddess will handle the conversion of Khorne's power. Eventually, the tree will grow to sustain itself. It will draw power from Khorne and the Emperor without my constant tending. For now, it's young and needs care, but when it matures, it will repay us all. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. During that time, Cassius stayed with Axis. Whenever the Golden Legion had urgent matters, Mater the Psyker would slip through the webway to consult Axis. The Golden Legion also reorganized, splitting into 50 new chapters, maintaining a standing force of 100,000 Astartes, not counting new recruits. Other Legion divisions proceeded in an orderly fashion as well. After a decade of preparation, the establishment of the Imperium's state religion finally began. Across the Imperium, the Emperor performed ostensible miracles. Sanguinius spread his golden wings, first proving the Emperor's power on Baal, and then delivering fiery, touring sermons on other major worlds. The speeches were incendiary, drenched in worship. They deified the Emperor. Finally, on Holy Terra, the inauguration ceremony of the new state religion took place. All the Gene Seed Primarchs made the journey. Praise the great divine Emperor. He sacrificed himself to save humanity. We exist because of his sacrifice. Sanguinius proclaimed, voice ringing out. Praise the great divine Emperor, the crowds chanted. The divine Emperor will bless every human. Every soul will return to the Golden Throne after death. The Emperor will guard the souls of mankind. Every word of our Father is holy. These are sacred teachings. Remember them and obey. Sanguinius intoned. Sanguinius felt an odd discomfort when reciting the more fanatical passages. The overblown religious tracts had not been written by him, but by Lorgar, the imprisoned Primarch who, above all others, understood how to proselytize. Lorgar's scriptures were brilliant in their art of conversion. Even Sanguinius, after studying them, had grown to admire the author. The ordinary citizens of the Imperium responded with fevered devotion. Axis stood among the gathered Primarchs. For now, the Emperor's energy output allowed Axis to leave his post and appear on Holy Terra. From today forth, the state religion of the Imperium of Man is established. It will protect the people and safeguard all humanity. It will protect your souls and your minds. All human souls belong to the divine Emperor, Sanguinius declared, and the Emperor's title was publicly changed. No longer merely mortal, he was now the divine Emperor, fully deified. I, Sanguinius, will carry out my father's will and become the first pope. I will lead humanity forward under the will of the great Lord of mankind, the divine Emperor, he announced. Great Archangel, we bow to the Pope of the Imperium of Man, cried the crowd. With that, Sanguinius was formally crowned Pope of the Imperium, his rank made equal in public stature to the likes of Axis and Guilliman. The Imperium had officially transformed from a secular human empire into a theocratic one. From today I resign as Lord Commander of the Blood Angels. I hand that position to my gene seed offspring. Every legion and chapter must establish monasteries and appoint priests to praise the divine Emperor, Sanguinius said. The corruption of chaos was relentless. Every legion needed clergy capable of spiritual defense. Some priests would receive powerful arms and learn the holy light way, drawing on the holy light to shield their brothers from corruption. The Imperium will found a new order, the Knight Templar Corps. Legions and chapters must send personnel to serve as Knight Templars for a fixed term. Only when their service ends may they return to their original units. Mortals may also join. Persevere in the holy light way, and you may wield that power in a mortal body. The Knight Templar Corps will consist of Astartes monks and mortal Knight Templars, Sanguinius proclaimed. The old Imperium of Man, the Imperium of Science and Reason, was effectively ended. In its place rose a theocratic empire built on the Emperor's divinity. Sanguinius, who publicly spearheaded the change, watched the cheering crowd with a trace of sorrow. The new order would take months to root on Holy Terra and decades to spread across the galaxy. After the ceremony, Axis and Sanguinius spoke briefly. Axis offered his encouragement, then returned to the webway. 50 years on, the new faith had taken hold across almost every corner of the Imperium, and ships were equipped with safer, 40 times hyperspace engines. Within a 100 light-year radius, travel could be made with nearly complete safety using these engines, reducing dependence on the dangerous warp. 100 years later, a catastrophe struck. Lionel Johnson's homeworld erupted into the Great Heresy. 1/3 of the Dark Angels followed Lucifer and rebelled, shattering Caliban. The Lion and his closest betrayer, Lucifer, were plunged into a deep sleep. The event sent shockwaves through the Primarchs, but the Emperor ordered that Axis be kept in the dark. 200 years after the Emperor's ascension, Rogel Dorn vanished during a boarding action. All that was found was a severed hand. Only a few years later, the Imperial Regent Guilliman fell victim to treachery. The traitor Primarch Fulgrim ambushed him, striking Guilliman in the throat. Though the Ultramarines rescued him, Guilliman remained between life and death. Chogoris Khan, while pursuing a dark Eldar raiding party, accidentally entered the webway and was whisked by its strange power into a webway system outside the galaxy, an extra-galactic webway world built by the Old Ones in their waning days. Not even the Laughing God could tread there. It was entirely unknown. Korax, Ferris Manus of the Iron Hands, and Perturabo of the Iron Warriors led small personal detachments into the Eye of Terror at a mysterious command to take vengeance on chaos, and never returned. 3 Primarchs were missing. Vulcan, the Lord of Drakes, withdrew into seclusion, either disillusioned with the Imperium or resentful for reasons of his own. Leman Russ, the Wolf King, received a dream command, supposedly from the Emperor, to seek an artifact called the Fruit of Life in the Eye of Terror, a thing said to be able to rouse the Emperor from the Golden Throne. Russ had no doubts. He left Bjorn in command and took the Wolf Guard into the Eye. He did not know the voice was not the Emperor's, but something hidden in darkness. Another Primarch, the second Primarch, Karl, suffered a mysterious injury and was put into a stasis field, like Guilliman. The Emperor forbade Axis from hearing of any of these calamities. By then, only 3 Gene Seed Primarchs were left free and active: Sanguinius, now Pope, Magnus on Prospero, and Kratos, Axis's son. 100 years later, the tally now 320 years since the Emperor had been seated on the Golden Throne, the Emperor's power had only increased thanks to the state religion. The daily power Axis had to convert grew monumental. Axis had to pour himself into the task with no room for distraction. The remaining Primarchs began to sense that something was wrong. The Emperor had even forbidden Kratos from using the webway to visit his father. Kratos had not seen Axis in over a century. Magnus, Kratos, and Sanguinius met in secret on Prospero. Magnus, Kratos, I believe the one sitting on the Golden Throne is no longer father, Sanguinius said. After 3 centuries, so many of their brothers were missing, slain, or maimed, it was impossible not to suspect foul play. I feel it too, Kratos replied. Grandfather is strange. He seems to be trying to tell us something, but can't explain it. We must see Axis, Magnus agreed. Chapter 323, Super Saiyan God Sanguinius spoke with a heavy voice. 3 full centuries had passed. The first 100 years had been tolerable. After that, during the subsequent 200, the Emperor had become almost unrecognizable. Once he still answered them, then he stopped, or rather, the brothers who used to speak with him all vanished. I agree. St. Giles is right. We must go find Father, Kratos said, nodding. No matter what, they had to get to Axis. The being on the golden throne, whatever it was now, was certainly not the Emperor they remembered. The grievous wounds and disappearances among their brothers, the quiet transformations across the Imperium, and Axis's century-long silence all pointed to a terrible possibility. The age of the Geneseed Primarchs was ending. Magnus sighed. He was at a loss, unsure whether he should act. Magnus, the Imperium is in a strange state. Help us reach Axis, Sanguinius implored. Though his psychic power was immense, Sanguinius alone could not force a path through the webway to Axis's location. Axis's domain in the webway was shrouded in a veiling mist. To penetrate it would require the combined might of Magnus, Sanguinius, and Kratos, 3 minds and wills exerting their full psychic power. If you've made up your minds, we'll undertake this mission in 10 years. You two must settle matters within your legions. We must prepare for the worst. Magnus said, No, Magnus, we should go now. We prepared before coming here. We can't wait. If we delay, both Kratos and I might be compromised, Sanguinius countered. He had grown certain that whatever was happening to the Geneseed Primarchs was tied to the Emperor. Magnus stood firm. Trust me. 10 years is my bottom line. If you won't prepare, I won't help. I will withdraw to seclusion. I will hide Prospero and live there forever. Magnus, do you know something? The only ones who truly know the Emperor's secret are you, Axis, and Lord High Counselor Mikado, Sanguinius said, narrowing his eyes. I know enough, Sanguinius, but I cannot tell you everything. If you don't believe me, ask Mikado. 10 years was as much as Magnus would give. Master Magnus, if you refuse to help, St. Giles and I will force our way through. We must see Father, Kratos said. It was no longer only about losing their father. All their uncles were missing, and their mother had gone with Father. He had been cut off for over a century. When the Emperor first forbade them from speaking of the Lion King's incident, he should have confided everything to Father. If you insist, then go. But listen, without my assistance, even if Kratos reaches Super Saiyan, and even if Sanguinius unleashes every ounce of his holy light, you will not reach Axis's place, Magnus warned. I understand. I hope you keep your promise, Sanguinius replied, his voice solemn. He patted Kratos' shoulder. Kratos, for these 10 years, you must remain by my side. Do not trust anyone, not even if they speak to you in the Emperor's voice. That is no longer our father. He knew that the only command that could make a Geneseed Primarch walk willingly into danger was the Emperor's will. As much as he hated to admit it, all the disappearances were tied to that will. 10 years from now, Nuceria, Magnus said. After they made their decision, Sanguinius and Kratos left. Magnus watched them go and sighed. Fate was sometimes unavoidable. Father had bought time for Axis, but the Dark King would not relent. All I can do is bear the consequences and protect Sanguinius, Kratos, and the rest, he murmured. The uncle and nephew returned to the headquarters of the ecclesiarchy to make preparations. Sanguinius issued orders to his forces. He commanded his blood angels and a paladin detachment. The paladins answered him only in the name of the Pope. He had firmer control over his blood angels. Though Sanguinius was no longer formally the Lord Commander of the Blood Angels, they would still obey him. Kratos, return to Vegeta first and arrange matters for your legion. I understand, St. Giles. Finish quickly and come back to meet with me. Do not trust anyone, including Lord High Counselor Mikado, Sanguinius warned. Kratos obeyed, returned to his homeworld, chose a new Lord Commander, and settled his forces. Then he and Sanguinius went to Nuceria and declared Sanguinius the first and only pope of the ecclesiarchy. Only the Emperor's children could hold the papacy. Other mortals, even space marines, could only be archbishops. The pope was the messenger of the Emperor's divinity. Without a regent or adopted son, the pope's authority could even eclipse the high lords of Terra. For 9 years, Sanguinius and Kratos stayed on Nuceria. On the 10th year, the appointed day, the 333rd year since the Emperor took the Golden Throne, Magnus, wielding the power of a warp demigod, tore through the warp and arrived. Now it's time to keep our agreement, Magnus. But before we go, I want to know the Emperor's true secret, Sanguinius said. Axis had been on a secret mission in the Webway. What was it? Magnus knew the details. Even Lord High Counselor Mikado only had a partial, classified understanding. Whatever it was, they were finally going to learn it. Let's enter the webway. It's not safe to speak here. I'll tell you on the way, Magnus replied. Sanguinius and Kratos nodded. Sanguinius glowed with golden light, releasing his holy radiance. Kratos transformed into Super Saiyan 2, flooding his mind with psychic power. Two golden auras bathed Nuceria. Magnus opened his third arcane eye, and a strange, pale blue light flared. Arcane energy, raw psychic power, and holy light combined, pushing through the layers of mist that guarded Axis's domain. The three of them entered the webway together, and with their departure, the Imperium lost its last 3 gene seed Primarchs. Inside the webway, Sanguinius and Kratos fixed their mental sight on Magnus. Father once had a chance to rise from the Golden Throne and recover fully, Magnus said, his voice heavy with destiny. The key is an artifact in Axis's care, the fruit of the spirit tree. You should remember it. I remember, Kratos exclaimed. Father sat cross-legged beneath an enormous divine tree on that world deep in the webway. That tree was bigger than the planet itself. He called it his cultivated divine tree and forbade me from ever speaking of it. His many visits over the last 100 years had engraved the life god's star and that towering tree in his memory, along with the world's nominal sister, life goddess Aisha, the world king god. Yes, that divine tree belongs to Axis. If it bears the true god fruit and Father consumes it, he can fully recover. So that's why. Sanguinius understood at last. No wonder Axis stayed in the webway. Magnus, you knew all this? I know enough. We'll discuss the rest once we reach Axis, Magnus replied. Above the life god star, Axis had sat cross-legged for 170 years. Now a vast, pure spiritual energy, an almost cosmic essence, stirred within him and slowly rose. His eyes, closed for a century, opened, no longer mortal, but suffused with divine light. His body floated upward above the tree as soft, majestic radiance bloomed around him, illuminating the planet. His form changed, slightly smaller and leaner than before, as if his life essence had transformed into something else. A crimson, boundless godly chi poured from him like a young star. Axis's hair and eyes shifted to a deep, sacred crimson. In that moment, a Super Saiyan god was born. Chapter 324, Super Blue transforms into power form, and 3 arrive. Axis felt the immense power within him and could barely hide his disbelief. Mortal strength and godhood were different orders of being. After ascending, his perception of everything had changed, and his power had been raised to another plane. He descended slowly onto the surface of the life god star. 300 years of effort. This was no easy achievement. He had finally become a Super Saiyan god by his own cultivation, and not just that, a perfected Super Saiyan god. This was not a temporary transformation. Axis's godhood was unlike the way Kakarot or Vegeta had first achieved Super Saiyan god. Axis had evolved his body itself to the level of a god. Kakarot's initial change had relied on the chi of 5 righteous Saiyans to become a Super Saiyan god, and that form did not last. Goku later learned to sustain and expand it, developing forms like Super Blue, but according to Whis, that had been a divergence. Axis's ascension had been different. He used the god chi from the Tree of God, comprehended the god chi of a world king god, and incorporated the warp energy he'd converted from the Emperor. 3 centuries of accumulation had cleansed his body with god ki and truly elevated him to godhood. Now he could sustain the Super Saiyan god state indefinitely if he wished. It could be his normal form. Axis, he's finally awakened. Life goddess Aisha and Kasha of the life god star flew over as they sensed his overwhelming aura. The Axis they saw now felt entirely different. The old Axis had been sharp and radiated raw ferocity. This Axis's body even seemed slightly reduced in bulk, his expression solemn and calm. The tranquility and balance came from the god Chi. Only now did Aisha feel kinship. The former Axis had been powerful, but he had not been a god. Axis inclined his head to the 2 women and reached out with perception toward the life god star. Odd, where the Harlequins and ordinary Eldar had once lived, there was nothing. The entire world contained only him, Aisha, and Kasha. You've changed a lot, Axis. Does the transformation make your body appear smaller? Has your combat power gone up or down? Kasha circled him. He looked less like a towering gene seed Primarch and more like a regular member of the Empire. Kasha worried his power might have decreased. His earlier transformations had been loud, explosive, especially the legendary Super Saiyan form, which had been crushingly oppressive. This calm, godly aura was different. In terms of pathing, I've reached the end of the Super Saiyan line, Axis said. Before, I had the strongest mortal weapons, but I couldn't touch godly power. I couldn't sense certain beings, much less attack them. He explained the lineage of his cultivation. Super Saiyan 4 and other forms had been powerful, and in some spin-offs even rivaled Super Blue, but the arrival of Super Saiyan God in official setting had set a clear divide. Mortals could not contend with gods. Later stories complicated the rules. Super Blue, Golden Frieza, Beast forms, Ultra Instinct, yet the fundamental difference between mortal and god remained. Axis had been transformed by the Emperor's energy. He was not an original legendary Super Saiyan, but born later and forged through long evolution. He was not weaker than the legendary types, and in many ways stronger in survival and potential. Axis's earlier path mimicked Goku's, but at Super Saiyan God, he finally forged his own road. Can you still transform into legendary Super Saiyan and the other forms? Kasha asked. Now I can also take the Super Saiyan form on top of Super Saiyan God. That's called Super Blue. Axis smiled slightly. Super Blue? Kasha repeated. It's shorthand, the Super Saiyan transformation layered onto Super Saiyan God. Axis drew a breath and shouted. Blue aura exploded from his body, his red hair flashed to blue, and his height rose to about 2.2 meters. Muscles expanded and his presence intensified. In Super Blue, Axis's aura surged, becoming even more oppressive than his Super Saiyan God state. This transformation is similar to your Super Saiyan form, Kasha observed. The total divine energy hasn't increased, but the combat output is higher. It's a quantitative increase rather than a qualitative leap, Axis said, clenching his fists. Super Blue was essentially the Super Saiyan state applied to a divine base. It bulked him up and returned him to a more familiar, powerful physique. He could also channel a legendary Super Saiyan into Super Blue for greater raw might, though that consumed enormous chi. He could even stack forms, Super Saiyan 4 over Super Blue, but those were still increases in scale, not a change in nature. A real qualitative evolution would take time. A dark curiosity stirred in him. He felt the pull of God of Destruction energy, wondering if he could access or absorb it to test his control. The temptation to try and taste that destructive power flickered through his mind. Axis, now that you've awakened, we have important news, Kasha said. Tell me. Axis nodded. Ever since you fell into deep cultivation, 170 years ago, this planet has been sealed by some force, Kasha said. We can't leave, and no one can enter. When Axis had gone under for cultivation and transformed his body into a godly vessel, a mist had settled over the world. Kratos had once visited regularly, but since the mist descended, it had been a full 170 years without contact. The Eldar had likewise ceased communication. What about the Emperor? Is Khorne still sending divine power? Has your father been in touch? Axis asked. During his cultivation, he had been converting the Emperor's power, so the Emperor's supply had not entirely stopped. Khorne has continued to send divine power, Aisha replied. I only need a little time each day to convert it. The divine tree has been growing for 3 centuries and can now absorb some of the Emperor's and Khorne's power on its own. But something strange has happened. Even though the tree grows, our link to the outside is completely cut. What about psychic webway communication? Both of you are strong psychers. Have you tried reaching out through the webway? Axis asked. No, Kasha said. Neither I nor Aisha can send messages outside. Everything here is closed off. That's why we feel something major must have happened. I also asked my father, but he hasn't spoken to me in over 100 years. 70 years with no word, 300 since they'd last left the planet. Kasha's worry was justified. She had no idea what the Empire had become. Now that I'm awake and have mastered God Chi, I'll break through this mist, Axis said. He feared nothing. His power now outstripped what he had ever wielded. In absolute terms, he felt stronger than many of the forms Goku had used in the movies. Faced with true godly authority, even Ultra Instinct felt inadequate. He'd pushed mortal Super Saiyan power to its peak long ago. His cultivation with God Chi had multiplied that foundation. As Axis readied himself to shatter the warp mist enveloping the life god star, a golden light shot out from within. Three figures materialized on the surface: Sanguinius, radiant with holy light, Super Saiyan Kratos, and Magnus, wielder of the Eye of Arcane. Relief washed over them. "Finally, we find you, Axis," Sanguinius said, his features showing the strain of a long search. Kratos and Magnus shared that same tense excitement. Seeing them, Axis felt them as father and mother, part of his lineage and his life. "Father, mother." The words burst out from Sanguinius and Kratos with a mixture of joy and exhaustion. Their excitement was almost too intense. Axis's instincts prickled. There was something off about the way they had found him. Chapter 325, Furious Super Saiyan God, the Dark Lord, get out here. Something big has happened to the Axis. This is what happened. Now there are only 4 Gene Seed Primarchs left, including us. Sanguinius told Axis everything at once, from the Lion King's first accident to the subsequent disappearances of the Gene Seed Primarchs, one after another. Axis's face went hard as he listened. He had arranged everything to prevent the Primarchs from abandoning the Imperium. He had done everything to prevent the Primarch era from ending. Yet after 300 years here, only a few Primarchs remained, and the pattern of their disappearances matched the original timeline. It meant his efforts had failed. Without hesitation, Axis fixed on the one true suspect, the old man on the Golden Throne. No wonder his domain had been shrouded in warp mist. "Father, St. Giles and I both suspect that the one on the Golden Throne is no longer the Emperor we know. He's changed completely," Kratos said. He hated coming to that conclusion, but the evidence was undeniable. The disappearances of the Gene Seed Primarchs were connected to the Golden Throne. "Axis, we need you to step up and clean up the Imperium's problems." "This is Father's wish," Sanguinius said, taking a steadying breath. After 300 years as Pope, he had learned to see a situation from more than one angle. The Gene Seed Primarchs had always been loyal to the Emperor, willing to die for him, but whoever sat on the Golden Throne now might not be their father any longer. "I'm sorry, Axis and St. Giles. This is all Father's decree. It was meant to protect you and your brothers," Magnus said with a bitter sigh. Sanguinius and Kratos turned on Magnus with hostile looks. "Magnus, what do you mean? Do you know something?" Sanguinius demanded. "Father didn't want to hurt us. He had no choice," Magnus answered quietly. "This was the only way for the Gene Seed Primarchs to survive. They may have left the Imperium, but at least they're alive." "Teacher Magnus, you've been in contact with Father all this time. Tell us. What happened? Why did this happen?" "The Imperium was thriving," Kratos said. "Don't make it harder on Magnus," Axis interjected. "The Emperor has a deep problem. In fact, the Emperor has a dark origin. The Emperor himself was created by that dark force." Magnus had watched the Emperor's fall and recovery firsthand. He had seen the man they called the Emperor become the Dark King and then regain himself during the final struggle. Questioning Magnus further would get them nowhere. He had been tormented by those truths for centuries. "Dark King, Axis, what does that mean?" Sanguinius asked. "I remember Horus once spoke of becoming the Dark King during the war against the Imperium." "The Dark King is an ancient being. His status even outranks the 4 Chaos Gods. When he is born and awakened, he can destroy and burn the world. Long ago, a band of human shamans pulled the Dark King's soul out of the warp and sealed it into a human infant. That child became an immortal charged with protecting humanity. The one they named the Emperor was born that way," Axis said, explaining the origin of the Dark King. Even Kasha had never heard of it before. She had never expected her father to be linked to such a terrible existence, a Dark King who could burn the cosmos. "Axis, are you saying Father will destroy the entire universe? Was Horus right?" St. Giles's eyes went wide. The idea that the being they served could be the greatest enemy of all life was hard to accept. If that were so, had Horus been justified? Sanguinius staggered inwardly at the thought. "Don't confuse things. The Emperor and the Dark King are not the same," Axis replied firmly. "The Emperor was born because of the Dark King. Yes, but the Emperor loves humanity and wants to protect it. The Dark King only loves himself. Horus chose his own path, but even if he had somehow won, he could not have stopped the Dark King. It was all part of a larger play." Axis looked grave. "I suspect the Emperor has been replaced or suppressed by the Dark King. During the Great Heresy, there were moments when the Emperor's consciousness was suppressed and he did terrible things. If the Dark King hadn't interfered, I alone could have ended the heresy. So is Father our enemy now? Do we need to defeat him? Defeat the Dark King? Sanguinius asked. Kratos, who had never imagined one day fighting his grandfather and father, fell silent. If what Magnus and Axis said was true, and given the Emperor's recent actions, then he might yet be a threat to humanity. No, Axis said immediately. The Emperor is our greatest ally. He willingly sat on the Golden Throne to protect humanity. If he hadn't, the Dark King would be born prematurely. A premature birth would weaken him somewhat, but he'd still be on the level of the Chaos Gods and would devour the souls of all humanity, including the Gene Seed Primarchs. So you had me establish the state religion to strengthen Father, to help him suppress the Dark King? Sanguinius realized. When the national religion had formed, Axis had only said it was important to the Emperor. He had never explained how. Now the reason was clear: to channel humanity's faith into a force that could bolster the Emperor against the Dark King. But the plan had failed. Axis feared the Emperor had been completely taken over. We do need to deal with the Dark King, Axis said. That's why I planted the fruit of God here, to let it grow and ripen. If I consume the fruit, my power will be enough to face the Dark King. At that point, the Emperor will rise from the Golden Throne. Together, our chances of defeating the Dark King are over 90%. So why didn't you tell us? How long until the fruit of God matures? Sanguinius asked. It will take another 10,000 years, Axis said. It was planted just over 3 centuries ago. The Emperor will not be able to consume it and rise until about 9,700 years from now. Damn it, Axis, what do we do? Are we just going to stand by and watch the Imperium we fought to build slide into darkness? Sanguinius cried. He finally understood why Magnus had wanted them to prepare for 10 years. Magnus had tried to buy time so the legions and the Imperium could be arranged to survive. Magnus's face hardened. We are sealed here now. The Dark King doesn't intend to let us leave. When you arrived in Axis's domain, the Dark King blocked any escape. Teacher Magnus, did you bring us here deliberately? We can't leave at all, can we? Kratos asked, his voice grim. I'm sorry, Magnus said, but it was the only way to protect you. The Dark King threatened Father and forced control. Father resisted with all his might but could not fully overcome the Dark King. Vulcan was the only one who willingly retreated. Everyone else left the Imperium under Father's arrangements. He looked each of them in the eye. If we leave now, we will go to war with the Dark King, and that means going to war with Father. If the Dark King is allowed to awaken fully, the Imperium and humanity will be destroyed. Sanguinius and Kratos fell silent at the gravity of it. I understand, Sanguinius finally said. Then we'll stay. Axis's face twisted. For 300 years, he'd shelved his fury, but now it finally broke free. To hell with the Dark King, you bastard. I've tolerated you long enough. The first time I yielded, and the second time I won't. Crimson flames flared around Axis. His body compacted, shrinking down to about 1.8 meters, but he glowed with a divine radiance. Sanguinius, Kratos, Magnus, and Kasha watched in stunned silence. Axis, don't be rash, Magnus warned. All of you stay out of this. I'm not what I was 300 years ago. Back then I yielded, but now I will challenge the Dark King one-on-one, Axis declared. The Dark King isn't even born yet. How can you fight him? Magnus protested. Not born? He can already interfere with the real universe. His presence has bled into this timeline. He can suppress the Emperor's mind. That proves he exists here. Before I couldn't sense him, because I couldn't find the aura of a god. But now, that's changed, Axis said, eyes lifting to the sky. Axis tapped into Super Saiyan God's perception. Godly sight is different from any human sense. Super Saiyan God may not match Super Blue in raw destructive output, but in perception and control over divine power, it surpasses it. In that perception, Axis felt the life planet's vast life force, the friendly vitality of the fruit of God, the Emperor's sacred psychic power, Khorne's bloodthirst, and a primordial, absolute darkness. I found you, Axis shouted, and with a palm thrust that transcended physics and space, he pulled something from the void, an inky humanoid silhouette of blackness. The figure stared in disbelief. Impossible! How did you find me? You've pushed us too far. I'm gonna kill you, Axis roared. His body flared blue as he shifted into super blue, and then he layered a Super Saiyan transformation on top of that, growing into a 3-meter-tall, radiantly powered state. "If you fight me, I will burn the souls of all humanity," the black figure warned. "Bah, we'll see about that," Axis snarled. A roar charged with godly power tore open a rift. It led neither to the warp nor the ordinary universe. "Come with me, you bastard. Let's go to another world and talk," Axis spat. The godly energy Axis wielded, Super Saiyan God combined with the raw space-bending strength of advanced Super Saiyan forms, was enough to rip open a portal to a parallel universe. He seized the Dark King's black form and leapt into the rift. Kasha, Kratos, and Sanguinius plunged in after him. Chapter 326, Parallel Universe, Axis versus the Dark Lord. Magnus wanted to follow, but Axis's power pinned him back. "Sanguinius, Kratos, Kasha, you can go. Old Magnus, you stay here," Axis transmitted telepathically. "Magnus, take my place. Use your psychic power to siphon and convert the Emperor's holy psychic power. You'll need to transform some spatial energy to help cultivate the divine tree. Don't worry, I'll be back after I deal with this one." Life goddess Aisha also received Axis's will. "Aisha, while I'm gone, you're in charge of the divine tree. Protect it. Magnus will handle my task, and you'll continue converting Khorne's divine power and researching the World King God's power." He could go face the Dark King himself, but someone had to hold things here. With Aisha watching the divine tree, Axis felt confident he could go and beat the Dark King. "Don't worry, Father. I'll take care of the divine tree," Aisha said, watching the spatial rift close. Father really did have a temper. The Dark King, with all his calculations, hadn't expected Axis to respond so explosively. If it was a fight he wanted, they'd give him one, even if it meant changing worlds. In a dizzying motion, the group reappeared in an unfamiliar cosmic sky, in a desolate star system. Axis surged forward first and sent the Dark King reeling. Kasha, Sanguinius, and Kratos were only just coming to. Kratos and Kasha used their potent psychic powers to form air bubbles so they could survive in vacuum, while Sanguinius, by virtue of his subspace god-level power, needed no such protection. You can traverse the multiverse?" the Dark King demanded, disbelief on his face. He didn't even possess that ability. At most, he could summon existences from parallel universes into this world, and in his world, he could not touch other cosmic species, not even the Emperor. "You and those four are supposed to be multiverse-level gods. What do you mean by that? Are you the same being across all universes or separate individuals?" Axis smiled coldly. "You call yourselves multiverse gods, yet you can't even destroy a single universe. Before I became Super Saiyan God, I studied Khorne from another world and recorded certain coordinates. With those, if your power is sufficient, you can break through the spatial barrier to parallel universes. Someday, if I progress further, I could even return to the Dragon Ball world. For now, I can traverse the Warhammer multiverses." "Axis, you are strong, but if you think you can stop me, you are mistaken." The Dark King radiated an endless tide of dark energy that threatened to swallow the system. Axis snorted, and the blue aura of his Super Saiyan God flared, pushing the darkness back. "Then bring it on," the Dark King said dismissively. "You're only beginning your path to godhood." "Father, let me help," Kratos called, his body alight with golden energy as he activated Psychic Super Saiyan and moved to Axis's side. "I want to help too, Axis." Sanguinius's form shone with holy light as he stood shoulder to shoulder with Axis. With the Dark King here, none of their usual limitations applied. He couldn't affect the Emperor, and he couldn't eradicate humanity outright. No, Axis's look stopped them. "Step back. This is my fight." "Don't be rash," Sanguinius said. "I won't interfere in your battle, but my holy light can strengthen you, shield you from dark influence, and heal your wounds." Axis had once joked that holy light was the best support power. It healed and blessed allies, a perfect reason to stay out of the front lines. Kratos added, "I have holy light as well. I can help St. Giles." I said no. This is the pride of a Saiyan. Remember, a Saiyan's fight is like this. Axis roared, the god of Chi flaring violently as he charged the Dark King. He struck the Dark King in the face with a fist augmented by God of Chi. Though the Dark King had no true physical body, Axis's blow forced him out of the void and actually hurt him. The Dark King's expression shifted. Logically, nothing should have been able to drag him out or harm him, but Axis had done both. Then come, Axis. I'll make you taste the true darkness of this universe. I will crush your pride, the Dark King vowed. Axis's eyes burned with the thrill of battle, a pure Saiyan hunger for strength. Pride? No, this is fun. The fun of fighting, the fun of crushing you. Laughter cut through the void as his azure god of chi flared and braided with streaks of violent golden lightning. In a roar that echoed through emptiness, Axis changed. His blue hair shifted to a blazing golden green, like a solar corona. But this gold was not ordinary Super Saiyan gold. It carried an older, wilder tone, the bloodline of the legendary Super Saiyan. The azure god of chi fused with the violent golden aura into a new, dazzling blue-gold divine flame. Space itself groaned and warped under the energy. Axis's power leapt far beyond his previous Super Blue state. If Kakarot could stack Kaioken on Super Blue, why couldn't a Saiyan stack Super Saiyan variations? The result was something unprecedented. The Dark King felt unease for the first time. The pressure Axis now exerted wasn't just raw power, it was a rule-level suppression, an authority over the very concept of destruction. Now let's have some fun, Axis declared. Divine majesty and Saiyan arrogance mingled in his voice. He vanished, not by teleportation but by pure speed beyond light, leaving a blue-gold streak that shredded the void. Axis's fist, wreathed in blue-gold divine flame, smashed into the Dark King's hastily formed dark shield. The shield, once able to withstand star system-level attacks, shattered like glass. The punch didn't stop. It drove into the Dark King's materialized chest. The Dark King screamed, an inhuman sound, as the pure dark energy that made him dented and cracked. Viscous dark matter, the abyssal blood of stars, poured from the wound. Each drop carried ultimate despair, corrosive enough to eat away at suns. But when that dark blood touched Axis's divine flames, it hissed and was purified. Impossible. You lowly. How can a mere mortal harm me? I who am an ultimate ancient dark god, the Dark King howled. Axis answered with a storm of strikes. Their clash became the embodiment of destruction, fists and energy colliding and setting off shockwaves that could tear apart stars. Axis moved like lightning and struck like thunder. Each of his attacks carried both purification and annihilation. The Dark King conjured endless shadowed weapons and shapes, black hole spears that devoured everything, tides of despair that corroded souls, enormous claws forged from billions of wailing spirits. But Axis's stacked divine power shattered, incinerated, and purified them all. Boom, boom, boom. One by one, dead planets crumbled to dust in the wake of their battle. An asteroid belt was erased. Axis's blow pierced the central star, triggering a supernova that briefly lit the system. Then the Dark King's furious dark breath snuffed it out and devoured the light, leaving a yawning void that pulled at everything. The entire star system teetered on the brink of total annihilation. The duel had surpassed mortal comprehension. Kratos and Kasha couldn't intervene. Even Sanguinius, a subspace god, could only watch as the two powers tore the cosmos apart from the sidelines. Chapter 37, Shenlong vs. Dark Giant. This is Father's true power. Kratos watched, blood roaring in his veins, fists clenched, aching to rush into the fray. But Axis's absolute command and the battle unfolding before him, beyond the limits of his comprehension, forced him to hold back. Is this his real strength? It surpasses a subspace god. I can't even put it into words. Sanguinius's golden eyes were wide with shock. He could feel Axis's power now far outstripping anyone he knew, even the Emperor himself, in terms of raw might. Even if he unleashed all his holy light and the full power of a subspace god, he wouldn't last a single exchange against the two forces clashing out there. We must retreat. The aftershocks are too dangerous, Kasha said calmly. She judged that the three of them had to fall back to avoid being caught in that destructive energy storm. She believed in her husband. She believed Axis would prevail. But mother, what about father? Kratos asked. Sanguinius glanced at Kasha with concern. At least if Axis faltered, Sanguinius could use his holy light to heal him. You must believe in your father as I believe in my husband, and Sanguinius in his brother, Kasha said. Only by pulling away can your father unleash his full strength. He has the pride of a Saiyan. He doesn't need our help. The pride of a Saiyan, Kratos understood then. It was a bloodline pride, the pride of a warrior. All right, mother. Let's move. They nodded together. Sanguinius spread his golden wings and carried them toward the galaxy's outskirts. The center of that region was no longer safe. "Axis, you've angered me!" The Dark King roared, a sound that shattered the void. His dark energy form suddenly swelled, transforming into a sky-eclipsing, writhing nebula. At its center, a super black hole spun, voraciously swallowing light and matter. He meant to drag Axis and that whole patch of cosmos into eternal nothingness. "Is that all you've got? Ultimate Dragon Fist Burst!" Axis drew his hands to his sides, fusing blue and gold divine energies. They converged into a blinding blue-gold sphere, its core incandescent with destructive heat. The power shook the souls of Sanguinius and the others even at the galaxy's edge. A divine dragon manifested, its body a four-colored conflux of gold, green, blue, and red. Axis now wielded the powers of legendary Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan 4, and conventional Super Saiyan, integrated together after his ascension to godhood. This was his divine power. "Divine Dragon, go," he commanded. A torrent of blue, green, red, gold surged forward. Not a simple beam, but a dragon of divine retribution made of pure divinity and rules of destruction. It tore through the dark nebula and struck the black hole at its heart. The impact did not carry through air, but resonated at the level of matter and space, an indescribable roar. The Dark King's core was ripped apart. The explosion obliterated the last remnants of the galaxy. Space itself cracked like a shattered mirror, and violent warp energy gushed through the fissures into the real universe. Axis's attack had rent the barrier between the physical universe and the warp wide open. It wasn't a small breach. It was a giant warp gate that could swallow planets. Endless demons poured out, eager to invade the real universe, but they met an onslaught of dark power and a four-colored divine dragon. Axis poured everything into transforming into a colossal divine dragon, 1,000,000 meters long, and faced the dark giant, an avatar of despair and void. The convulsions in the warp grew frantic. The ripples of this clash transcended the real universe and began to disturb the warp itself. Deep within the Eye of Terror, Slaaneş's palace trembled and the Feast of Pleasure halted. The Lord of Pleasure showed, for the first time, a look of surprise and uncertainty. He felt a force neither chaotic nor weak, but terrifyingly potent. On the plague planet, Nurgle's great cauldron churned. The grandfather of plagues stilled his whispers and turned his putrid bulk toward the real universe. On the brass throne, Khorne sprang up, blood-red eyes flaring with unprecedented warlust and an unfamiliar apprehension. In the crystal labyrinth, Tzeentch's crystal ball spun, futures flashing then shattering. The Lord of Change was thrown into an unprecedented frenzy of calculation. The four ruinous powers of chaos, across that realm, simultaneously perceived this cataclysmic battle, visitors from another universe. On the golden throne of Holy Terra in this parallel universe, the Emperor, seated, enduring endless agony, sustaining humanity's last beacon, felt his ancient will tremble. His gaze pierced the warp's turbulence into the real universe and found the galaxy that had just been erased, the figure standing in blue-gold divine flame, and the wounded dark avatar roaring in defiance. A clear thought, woven with surprise, scrutiny, vigilance, and perhaps a sliver of hope, echoed in the Emperor's vast consciousness. Another existence from another universe. Another me, or another Dark King. The battlefield's heart was a maelstrom. Spatial fragments and warp storms seethed like a furious ocean. Anything that emerged was torn apart by raw energies. Axis's divine dragon was an existential blasphemy against physical laws, an embodiment of his will and of integrated Saiyan divinity. Its scales shone with primordial light. Each serpentine motion stirred the shattered spatial fragments and violent warp currents. Its dragon eyes burned like stars, carrying the Saiyan's endless battle intent, divine majesty, primal ferocity, and the will to shatter life's limits. This was no illusion. It was the ultimate manifestation of Axis and the welded divine power of every Saiyan bloodline. Opposing it, the dark giant was the materialized embodiment of finality and despair. It siphoned chaotic energy from the warp rifts and the malevolent residue left when its black hole was blown apart. Its form was pure, light-devouring void. Its surface flowed with the wails of billions. It subtly exceeded the divine dragon in height and exuded a gravitational field that threatened to drag everything into eternal annihilation. The divine dragon roared, not in sound, but in the very language of cosmic laws. Four-colored divinity boiled outward from its core. Wherever the light passed, the demons trying to spill into the real universe were instantly annihilated, their souls evaporated. The tainted warp energy was driven back and purified, leaving a cleaner battlefield. "Axis, you won't purify me. I am the end. I am the void," the dark giant bellowed, a soul-shaking cry. Its massive hand opened, condensing a miniature singularity, deeper and more gravitationally crushing than before, into its palm. This was no mere black hole, but a concept of finality, frenziedly pulling at the divine dragon's form and beginning to twist the divine light around it. The divine dragon writhed, four-colored light flared, forcing its shape to hold. It did not retreat. It lunged with even greater fury. Boom, boom, boom. The dragon extended a claw, red and blue divinity coiling around it, and ripped into the dark giant's chest, carving several deep gouges that burned with divine fire as dark matter gushed out like a waterfall. The dark giant retaliated. A fist formed of despair, and the singularity's gravity smashed into the dragon's flank. Aang! The divine dragon's roar was one of fury. Scales shattered at the impact. The red and blue light faltered, and golden lightning cracked across the wound. Then the core green light, Super Saiyan 4's raw, untamed vitality, blazed, and the wound began to heal visibly beneath the divine glow. The fusion of four-colored powers granted Axis unmatched destructive might, divine defense, purification, and the Saiyan's indomitable life force, an indestructible resilience rooted deep in his bloodline. The holy light seed Sanguinius had once given Axis had grown over the years, nourished by life's power. His regeneration was terrifying now. The battle escalated, drawing the attention of the Chaos Four and even that parallel universe's emperor, while in the riven space the two titans tore and healed, struck and purified, locked in a duel that shook both reality and the warp. Chapter 328, Chaos. Four peddlers, God assists, dizziness is normal. Dark Lord, every collision between Axis, in his four-colored divine dragon form, and the dark giant rang like two universes grinding together. The clash between a god of chi and a font of despair tore at the seams between reality and illusion. Chaotic warp energy squandered like fuel by both combatants. The fabric of the surrounding real universe was sundered. Hordes of warp creatures spilled forth, only to be obliterated by the aftermath of the duel between the Dark King and Axis. Axis's divine dragon raked away massive swaths of dark matter with a claw. The darkness screamed and was annihilated within the dragon, while the dark giant answered with a punch steeped in the concept of end. Each strike made the four-colored divine light enveloping the dragon shudder, scales spiderwebbed with cracks. Yet the core green glow, the Saiyan's primordial life force, refused to die. With the holy light seed inside him, wounds closed and flesh reconstituted at a terrifying rate. The divine dragon, an illusion forged by Axis, opened its cavernous maw and unleashed a colossal shockwave of energy, tens of millions of kilometers long, tearing through most of the dark giant's form. Axis's current Super Saiyan god power could wound the Dark King, but the Dark King, even half destroyed, greedily drank in power from the warp. "Futile struggle, Axis. Your power will run dry. My despair is eternal," the dark giant bellowed. As chaotic energy poured from warp rifts and negative emotions from billions of beings fed it, the dark giant's form seemed to re-solidify and heal. He was the universe's fundamental darkness, the embodiment of despair, and Axis had ripped open the boundary between the real universe and the warp, letting him draw power freely. The dark giant began to mutate, sprouting writhing tentacles like a cosmic cephalopod, vile, obscene. "Pathetic," Axis snorted and pressed his attack. The tentacle monster lashed out in turn. Immense dark appendages coiled around the divine dragon like pythons across a constellation, the attached concept of existence negation gnawing at the dragon's divine essence. "Surrender to my power of dark despair, Axis. You cannot win. With warp energy, I can be reborn endlessly." The Dark King sneered. "Despair? A joke. If you can revive 1,000,000 times, I'll kill you 1,000,001, Axis snarled. The four-colored divine dragon released an earth-shattering roar. The brilliant four-hued light collapsed inward, concentrating at the dragon's head. Axis poured his entire will and divine power into a single point. The four powers, red, Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan 4, blue, Super Saiyan God Blue, gold, Super Saiyan, and green, Primordial Super Saiyan, didn't merely stack. Under divine harmonization and within the white-hot life furnace of his Saiyan bloodline, they transmuted into something qualitatively new. An ineffable, overwhelmingly potent chi gathered in the dragon's maw, energy that could remake rules and unmake existence. The beam that erupted was indescribable in color and meaning, carrying the power to destroy everything. It pierced the dark tentacle giant. There was no cataclysmic blast, no clashing thunder, but a supreme sweep of law, like a divine eraser. Where the light passed, the dark giant's despair-forged flesh silently dissipated. The Dark King screamed, a sound that chilled the soul, but his tentacles and hardened limbs melted away like ice under a noon sun. No! The cry ended in a final, disbelieving wail. The Dark King's massive body collapsed like a ruined sandcastle, scattering into a flowing storm of dark energy, carried off and diluted by the raging warp tempests. He could absorb warp energy to repair himself, yes, but that capacity had limits. Axis's strike had pushed him beyond that limit. The Dark King's core consciousness, the oldest kernel of darkness, took a shattering blow. For the first time, fear gripped the being who had always proclaimed itself the universe's end. He was defeated by a mortal outsider. The loss was impossible to accept. He could not face Axis now. He dared not linger. Seizing the moment, the divine dragon's form teetered, and Axis's divine aura briefly receded. The Dark King's wounded core condensed into a darker-than-night stream of light and desperately tried to burrow into the largest warp rift their battle had torn open. He sought to escape back into the warp of the main universe, there to mend himself on endless chaotic energy and humanity's negative emotions. "You bastard, trying to run?" Axis's divine sense cracked like thunder through the void. The four-colored divine dragon disintegrated instantly, reforming into Axis's human body. His face was pale, his all-out strike had drained him, but the burning will and killing intent in his eyes only sharpened. The Super Saiyan bloodline let chi surge through him anew. The Dark King must not be allowed to escape, or he would wreak vengeance. Axis realized who had sent Kasha 10,000 years later, the despicable Dark King. He would not let him slip away. Blue-gold divine flames reignited around Axis with super-blue brilliance. He surged after the dark essence, a streak of light tearing through the void toward the yawning warp wound. He intended to leap into the warp and finish the Dark King. On the galactic edge, 3 observers watched. Stunned, "Father," Kratos cried from afar, panic burning in his chest. "Axis, stop!" Kasha called, alarmed. "We must follow." Sanguinius decided instantly, wings unfurling as a shield of holy light enveloped Kasha and Kratos. They were ready to charge toward the rift. Then something unusual happened. The Dark King's escaping stream of consciousness, racing like a stray animal toward the warp breach, was intercepted. 5 distinct, immense powers descended at once across the rift, like an invisible chasm slamming shut. One was a crimson storm of pure bloodlust and war, Khorne. One was an ever-shifting lattice of purple machinations, Tzeentch. One was a rancid green miasma of pestilence and paradox, Nurgle. One was a pinkish-purple vortex of exquisite sensation and unbearable pain, Slaanesh. The last was a cold, sterile, yet oddly protective pale gold barrier, laced with a faint divine will, the corpse emperor of this parallel universe. These 5 forces did not cooperate neatly. They spat at and eroded one another. Yet at that moment they shared a single purpose: seal the rift and stop the Dark King from fleeing back into the main warp. Someone else was brawling with the Dark King. Any aid was welcome. The Dark King had been an enemy to life itself and to the Chaos 4 gods, and this tacit alliance between the Chaos 4 and the Corpse Emperor had effectively shut off the surrounding warp passages. "No! Damn you! How dare you! How dare you do this to me!" The Dark King screamed, voice flaring with fury and raw despair. "When I am reborn, I will crush you all. Your domains, your followers, will be swallowed into nothing." He had calculated everything, yet he had not counted on these 5 to intervene. The prospect of being forced into a long slumber loomed. "Go, mighty warrior, tear it apart, give me a grand war worthy of remembrance." Khorne roared, blood-drunk with excitement. "Order within chaos? Fascinating. Unknown entity, your victory could reveal new permutations to us." "The Dark King is a common threat," whispered Tzeentch, all calculation and observation. "Life and death are one, yet this pure end is not my wish. Go, warrior. Use your strength to end this unbalanced endless darkness, Nurgle rumbled, a gruff rejection in his tone. Oh, intoxicating despair, such sweet terror. Warrior, please continue your performance. Let me savor this exquisite feast of emotion, Slaanesh purred, reveling in the torment. At least you possess a human shell, carrying hope. If possible, annihilate it, intoned the Corpse Emperor, dry and intermittent but absolute. This unexpected collective assist from some of the multiverse's strongest beings cut off the Dark King's escape. He was pinned to the shattered battlefield that he and Axis had created. The Chaos Four Gods and the local Emperor now turned their aid toward Axis. Today you die, Dark King. Axis's divine will boomed like thunder in answer to the intervention. Enveloped in blue-gold flames, he appeared before the Dark Essence, which struggled against the multicolored barriers like a trapped animal. Axis had no intention of letting these chaos powers down. He moved to finish the Dark King here and now. Even if he could not permanently kill such a primordial being, he could erase the Dark King from the current timeline, force him into an indefinite slumber, and postpone his birth. The Dark King's core had shrunk from a titanic monster to an intense, ever-rotating dark singularity, a compacted essence of pure darkness, a despair so cold it could freeze the soul. Axis, you cannot kill me. I am inevitable. I am part of balance. Kill me, and order will collapse. Chaos will swallow everything, it shrieked, trying to shake Axis's resolve. Axis grinned, savage and hungry for battle, golden green and divine light burning in his eyes. I'm here to smash that so-called inevitability. And as for balance, today I'm hitting your concept of balance. Before the Dark King could finish, Axis spread his arms. The blue-gold flames around him surged, green and red lights, Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan God 4, blazing with unprecedented intensity. The four-colored energy compressed into a blinding sphere and struck the dark singularity. The Dark King emitted a shrill, tragic scream and then faded. He could not be truly destroyed. He had not yet fully been born. But Axis's blow sealed him into a long, powerless slumber. He would be unable to trouble this timeline for a very long time. Axis exhaled, relief finally leaking through his exhaustion. Had the Chaos Four Gods and the parallel universe's Emperor not intervened, the Dark King might have escaped. As it turned out, the Chaos Four had been unified on this matter, and the Emperor appeared to have been restraining the Dark King within himself after absorbing 10,000 years of human emotions. Well done, mighty god from another universe, one voice intoned. What a thrilling war. Come to the brass throne and join me in conversation, another offered. Your fighting is delightful. The pleasure palace is always open. Welcome, a third purred. My garden welcomes you, stranger god, came a fourth. But you owe us a favor. We helped you. You must repay it, the chorus added. The Chaos Four sent their congratulatory, self-interested messages to Axis. They had intervened, so Axis now owed them. Axis snorted. I didn't ask for your help. You acted on your own. I don't owe you anything. Chapter 329. The four Chaos Gods of another world and the Corpse King Axis didn't care about favors. You four only helped me to scheme against the Dark King, he said. The Dark King on this timeline I already killed once. It will be at least 10,000 years before he can resurface and gather his strength again. The Emperor, or rather, the human Emperor of this universe, is safe for now. Those words made the four Chaos Gods visibly awkward. This god from another universe clearly bore them some ill will. Have you misunderstood us, honored guest? Tzeentch said quickly. We are friendly. We love every life in the universe. That's right. The Dark King exists to destroy all life. That's why we oppose him. And intelligent life makes the warp more substantial. Souls strengthen us. We want a universe teeming with life, added Tzeentch. Axis's attitude suggested he had a poor relationship with the Chaos Gods of his own world, but if he could fight the Dark King, he likely didn't get along with the human Emperor either, right? Then a brief mental plea bloomed inside Axis's head. The Emperor on the Golden Throne reached out. Help me once, unknown entity. Humanity is on the brink of extinction. The Emperor's message was thin with pain. Helping Axis seal, or rather eliminate, the Dark King in that other world had cost the Emperor greatly. He was asking a favor now. Beside him stood his daughter Kasha and his son Sanguinius. From the Emperor's mental tone, Axis felt a kinship in another, unnamed entity as well. No problem. If you need anything, I can help once, Axis answered readily. The four Chaos Gods, who had been preparing to mock, stiffened. What was this? Just now we were polite and you refused us, but you agreed to this corpse on a throne at once? Their indignation flared under the surface. Powerful God, the human emperor isn't what you think. He's darker than you imagine. He may even become the Dark King himself. He's just not fully evolved yet. He will always be your enemy. Slaanesh hissed, disappointment and lust tangled together. He had wanted to invite this male god back to his pleasure palace. Instead, Axis dismissed him and warmed to the emperor. Nurgle, smelling life and decay, offered, I sense powerful life energy in you. I am the manifestation of life. Perhaps we could get to know each other. Through the perspective of a subspace god, Axis glanced at Slaanesh and Nurgle. Slaanesh was an androgynous, grotesque beauty with 6 arms and a long, slithering tongue. Nurgle was a bloated, oozing mountain of pestilence. Axis had no interest in Slaanesh's palace or Nurgle's garden. You can come to the brass throne and talk with me. You are a pure warrior. Let's converse as warriors, Khorne said simply. Axis inclined his head to the blood-red Khorne. Slaanesh and Nurgle bristled. What was this preference for the tough guy type? Did Axis have some odd taste? Apparently, in another universe, he had good relations with Khorne. But why with the human emperor? Logically, the emperor, being the Dark King's vessel, should have been destroyed by Axis if Axis was the one who had brought the Dark King's corpse here. From the Chaos God's point of view, Axis should be the entity who eliminated the human emperor and then drew out the Dark King. That Dark King did not seem to have fully matured. If it had been the Dark King in full form, the 4 gods would have been incinerated instantly. Powerful entity, you appear to have some special means to extract the Dark King from the human emperor's body, yes? Tzeentch asked, eyes narrowing. He was watching Kratos, Sanguinius, and Kasha standing beside Axis, and instantly recognized Sanguinius and Kasha as the Emperor's offspring. The other man, however, was unknown. No records of him existed in this universe. From his aura, Tzeentch guessed this stranger was the son of the Emperor's daughter, and that his father was the powerful entity who had just pulled the Dark King out. Interesting, Tzeentch murmured. Very interesting. In that other world, things happened quite differently. Father, are you talking to someone? Kratos asked, startled. He noticed his father staring into the void as if in conversation. Sanguinius, as a subspace god, could vaguely perceive Axis interlocutors, but could not hear content clearly. His own godly senses were far inferior to the 4 Chaos Gods. Don't be noisy, Kratos, Kasha warned. Your father is communicating with a powerful entity. Just stand guard. Extremely powerful entity. We are curious about you, about your power, and how you managed to draw out the Dark King, Tzeentch said. He had deduced that this Dark King had not simply been produced by the human emperor's death, but had been forcibly extracted by Axis. At that pronouncement, all eyes, including the human emperors, shifted to Axis in surprise. Everyone had assumed that Axis had killed the human emperor and that the Dark King emerged afterwards. Axis neither denied nor hid the truth. As you said, I have a special way to bring out the Dark King, Axis admitted calmly. Truly remarkable. Then we should speak further. Perhaps you can help us deal with the Dark King of our universe as well, Tzeentch said, sincere for once. Despite their rivalries with the human emperor, the 4 gods were unanimous in their desire to remove the Dark King. That's not impossible. I can pull the Dark King out of the void through a wondrous perception, Axis replied. Ha! This will be an enjoyable conversation, Tzeentch chuckled. When you are ready, entity from another world, we will come find you again. Then we will work together to deal with the Dark King. Tzeentch and the other 3 gods withdrew, each leaving a trail of surprisingly friendly communiques for Axis. Entity from another world? Should I call you son-in-law? You married my daughter, the Emperor said mentally, the Golden Throne's presence cold and immense. The Emperor 10,000 years hence was terrifying in psychic power, a dry, desperate flame. He had suppressed the Dark King through humanity's continuous faith and prayers, but the cost was a terrifyingly potent and implacable will. In that form, he could not even converse with the gene seed Primarchs. Only a few extraordinary beings could. Yes, I married Kasha. In my world, I am indeed your son-in-law. You even modified me with gene seed Primarch surgery, Axis replied. The Emperor from this universe, Huang Lao Han, as Axis thought of him, was far stronger than his counterpart in Axis's own world. This Emperor was, in some respects, comparable to the Chaos Gods themselves. My counterpart from another world, it's good that you exist. Protect your world well. Mine is only darkness, the human Emperor said, a hint of envy slipping through his mental voice. He could feel the hope surrounding Axis and the distant hope of his other self. The Emperor admitted, inwardly, to a sliver of jealousy. No matter how he rallied his sons, it could only delay humanity's doom. I still need to recover some strength before I can handle the Dark King of your world, Axis said. Before then, I can do a small favor. Tell me what you need. Through powerful psychic perception, Axis had already seen the deeper threat. The warp and the material universe here were wildly unstable. A great rift had opened, slicing the galaxy. Chapter 330. The Corpse King who developed in desperate situation. Axis's bad taste. Warmaster Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade had apparently succeeded in this universe. The Great Rift yawned across the galaxy, ushering humanity into the bleakest age of Indomitus in the 42nd millennium. Axis couldn't help but admire the Corpse Emperor of this world. 10,000 years later, he had single-handedly propped up humanity. Without that decaying figure on the Golden Throne, humanity would have long ago been overrun by Xenos, and chaos might have finished the Imperium entirely. It was tragic and magnificent in equal measure. Under unbearable pressure, this emperor had risen to near impossibility. Compared to that, Huang Lao Han, the emperor of Axis's own world, had developed along similar lines, but ever since Axis had appeared, Huang Lao Han had grown a touch complacent. Axis was the emperor's trump card. He could solve any crisis, and he had proven his ability to the emperor a century before the Great Heresy. The emperor of Axis's world never faced the same crushing burden or horrific injuries. There the Golden Throne was more a stage. 300 years later, Sanguinius reported, the emperor's body remained intact, uncorrupted. After the Pharos system was integrated into the Golden Throne, the pressure eased further. No more endless sacrifices of psychers. 10,000 psychers could channel their power daily without dying. But the emperor on this Golden Throne had suffered unimaginable torment, forged almost entirely in despair. Huang Lao Han was like a bloom in a greenhouse, too coddled. The emperor of this world had carved out a future on his own. Axis thought the contrast was telling. Sometimes people need to be pushed to discover what they're truly capable of. Huang Lao Han needed a kick in the back when Axis returned. Get up and be the famous ruler on the Golden Throne, Axis thought with a smirk. Stop wasting everyone's time. I am glad my bloodline endures. I did not meet you in this world, or did you appear later? The Corpse Emperor asked. From now on, Axis would refer to the Emperor of this parallel universe simply as the Corpse Emperor. No, I was discovered during the Great Crusade. I landed on Leman Russ's planet and was found by you. Leman Russ became a gene seed Primarch. As for me, I underwent decades of alteration. At first, I believed it was Custode's surgery, but it turned out to be a gene seed Primarch's scheme. You even raised an Astartes Legion for me, the Golden Legion. They can all perform the Golden Transformation, doubling their combat power, Axis summarized his past. That is a pity. I never met you here. Our world is dark, cold, and full of despair. I have had to bear humanity alone, the Corpse Emperor sighed. Don't worry. Maybe I can help. You've seen Sanguinius and your daughter Kasha and your grandson Kratos, right? We can help you here, Axis said. The threat of the Dark King had been resolved, and Huang Lao Han should have recovered by now. Let that old scoundrel rethink his uselessness. Axis was in no hurry to go home. He might as well tour this darker, original version of the 40K universe. I am pleased that Kasha in this universe remains in my cell. Her mind has collapsed, the Emperor said. Oh, can she be freed? She's my wife in another world. I want to save her, Axis replied. In this timeline, Kasha had been imprisoned for more than 10,000 years. She had been erased from history, every trace of her removed. If you request it, yes, but you must come to the Golden Throne. I cannot communicate with the Custodes at present, the Emperor explained. So Axis would have to go to the Golden Throne himself. Fine, he'd do the favor and free Kasha. But there were other matters the Emperor wanted handled in person. When you come, you can also help me with several things. First, go to Macraj and rescue my son, the Gene Seed Primarch Robert Gilliman. He has been dormant for 10,000 years. High Megos Belisarius Call of the Mechanicus has completed the Armor of Fate. Only a catalyst is needed to revive him. Originally, the Emperor had sought an alliance with the Eldari and their gods to restore Gilliman. Now, there was a better candidate, Axis. With his divine power, he could sweep away Slaanish's taint. No problem. We'll go to Macraj ourselves, Axis agreed. He had a private, mischievous agenda as well. Before crossing over, he'd been determined to pair the regent and his consort to manufacture a highly publicized match. In his other world, the life goddess Aisha had become his daughter, and the Eldari were allied with humanity's war chariot. Axis intended to recreate that bond here. For the political marriage in this universe, he'd let the old 13th spearhead it himself. I found you an Eldari wife. Aren't you happy, Gilliman? He imagined, already planning to film the ceremony and show it to Gilliman back home. The look on Gilliman's face would be priceless. Also tell Sanguinius that his gene seed offspring here are suffering an unprecedented disaster. A race called the Tyranids has invaded the galaxy. Their threat surpasses chaos. They devour everything. Baal faces a Leviathan swarm. If Sanguinius from your world can go to bolster the Baal system, the sight of their gene father's descent would lift the Blood Angel's spirits, the Emperor added. Sanguinius's death remained one of the Emperor's deepest wounds. Baal was under imminent threat. Time had been accelerated there, a century outside past, while only a week or so went by at Baal as they waited for Gilliman to awaken. After stabilizing the Imperium reunification, he could support Baal, but if Sanguinius from Axis's world could help, so much the better. No problem. We'll handle it. Could you perhaps hint at my identity to your living saint? Otherwise, if I go there, I'm worried I'll end up beating up all of Gilliman's sons by accident, Axis said cheekily. I will inform my living saint, Saint Celestine. As for your identity, for now you may act as my chosen one, the Corpse Emperor said carefully. He feared that if Axis revealed himself as a true subspace god, the consequences would be unpredictable. The Imperium was monotheistic. Admitting another god would be unthinkable. Even with Celestine's endorsement, openness about Axis's divinity could provoke chaos. Really, besides being a god, I was your gene seed Primarch in my world, Axis said casually. You haven't forgotten that, right? No need for complications. Just tell them we're Primarchs from another reality. It's not that simple, the Corpse Emperor replied. If possible, Sanguinius could impersonate his resurrected self. You and your son, Kratos, could impersonate the 2nd and the 11th Primarchs. My son and I can't stay here too long, Axis protested. The Emperor seemed to want him to establish an Astartes legion in this world. Humanity has advanced in the last 10,000 years. We've developed the Primaris Astartes. I can have the Creator teach you that technology unconditionally. If you require anything else, tell me, the Corpse Emperor offered. I do have one request. In my world, the Eldari and humanity are allies. I'd like you to ally with the Eldari here as well. How about a political marriage? Axis suggested. The Corpse Emperor sounded incredulous. What? Helping you is a small thing for me. Primaris tech, if we wanted to research it in our world, wouldn't be impossible. It's icing on the cake. I can impersonate the 2nd Primarch and my son the 11th. But Gilliman, he has to marry that great seer of the Eldari. By the way, the Eldari life goddess in my other world is my daughter. Helping the Emperor was partly repaying a favor and saving a tragic Imperium, and partly pure mischief to mess with Gilliman's mind. Axis was being delightfully reckless. Chapter 331. Kyrillian marriage is fine, but your son will marry Cyrus. The Corpse Emperor on the Golden Throne stared at Axis in disbelief. What had he just heard? The Eldari life goddess is your daughter? You must be joking. The life goddess was born 60 million years ago during the War in Heaven, the most ancient age of the universe. Subspace gods have no parents. They are gods formed from the faith of entire races. How could Axis possibly be her father? You want an alliance with the Eldari? You don't need to invent such ridiculous reasons, the Corpse Emperor said. This is absurd. I'm not joking, Axis replied, smiling. In a physiological sense, I am her father. I created her. Impossible. Subspace gods cannot be created by a single being. Only a whole people can birth them. Besides, you haven't even been alive 1,000 years in this universe. How could you create the life goddess? The Emperor argued. Axis inclined his head. Have you looked at Sanguinius? Is he still the original gene seed Primarch you made? He's become a god. He has a physical body in the warp and a physical body in the material universe, a corporeal god. Axis's brightest card was the fact that he possessed a truly divine physical body, something subspace gods did not. The Emperor's expression shifted as it dawned on him. Sanguinius's physical form was far more perfect than the crude gene seed Primarch bodies the Emperor had produced. It could comfortably contain the soul of a subspace lesser god. Axis's body, Axis realized, had been perfected even beyond that. As you suspect, the method is what I call the God Ascension Ritual, Axis continued. Its inventor, you should know him, is Magnus. You can help Guilliman? You can make Guilliman a true subspace god while he retains a human body? The Emperor's tone betrayed excitement. A returned Primarch would lift the Imperium's morale, but a genuine subspace god? One god was worth far more than numerous Primarchs. Yes, I can. I made a special corporeal shell for the Eldari life goddess, which is why I am her nominal father, Axis said. He explained that although all the original mental tree seeds had been used in his native world, he still had damaged seeds and several spirit tree fruits left. He could craft more souls vessels. The Emperor considered, then said, If you insist, I can arrange a marriage between Guilliman and the Eldari. But are you sure the Eldari here will accept your terms? A political marriage can be imposed on humans, but will the Eldari consent? Leave that to me, Axis answered. I'll make them agree gladly. Whether it was the pride of the Eldari or Yniad, the death god in his nascent state, Axis had methods. If necessary, he could always break into Father Nurgle's garden again and steal another life goddess. He had already managed one abduction, another would be feasible, and 2 life goddesses planting trees for him would be formidable. I agree to the marriage, the Emperor replied, but for it to carry real weight, it should bind our blood. Use my grandson. Guilliman is a gene seed Primarch. His physiology might not match an Eldari Great Seer. The Emperor's eyes flicked toward Kratos, standing behind Axis. If the alliance was to be meaningful, it ought to involve his true bloodline. Even if the blood came from another universe, it was still his blood. Don't even think about my son, Axis said quickly. We're leaving this world eventually. How could that work? Kratos bristled inwardly. Axis was protective. Still, he was already over 400 years old. Axis made a wry mental note. He would watch that. Guilliman doesn't particularly like Eldari women. This marriage is a tactical move. If you prefer to show sincerity, let your grandson marry the Eldari instead, the Emperor suggested. Axis grinned. To be worthy of my son, one must at least be a god. I think your living saint Celestine would be perfect. Why not have her marry my son? You mean Celestine? The Emperor hesitated. She is akin to a greater daemon of the warp, more a being of pure warp energy than someone with a true body. If your son has no objection, I won't oppose the match, but they would not have offspring. Do you really believe that because I made a body for the life goddess, I cannot make one for your living saint? Axis said. Before ascending to his present state, he had already fashioned a divine body for the life goddess using cultivator seeds. Celestine, at best the level of a greater daemon, would be far easier. He would not even need first-generation cultivator seeds. Second generation would suffice to cultivate a proper shell for her. The Emperor's face cleared. Very well. 2 marriages then. Guilliman to the Eldari Great Seer, and my grandson to your son, to the living saint. The Emperor cared little for the first alliance. The Eldari were tools to be used. But Axis's son mattered. The marriage would bind 2 universes. I wanted your son to wed Celestine even more, the Emperor admitted inwardly. Good. I'll go to Macragge now, Axis said, pleased. Getting Celestine as his son's bride felt like a bargain. It was preferable, he thought, for the living saint to be in a straightforward marriage than in the ambiguous relationship she had with Inquisitor Greyfax. After a few logistical details, Axis broke the link with the Emperor. Sanguinius, who had been watching, was stunned. Axis, you were speaking to this world's father? That father is so powerful. Even standing at the warp's edge, Sanguinius could feel the other's soul tremble like a burning star. The Emperor here has sat on his golden throne for 10,000 years, drawing the faith of humanity for a full 10 millennia, Axis said. He's far more powerful than the Emperor of the 30K era. This world's God Emperor has a presence that resembles what you'd expect from a God Emperor. Sanguinius nodded, Kasha and Kratos echoing his assent. This was not their home. They had obligations elsewhere. Why return so soon? Axis asked. The Dark King is finished. The Emperor can sit more comfortably now. We can stick around, help this universe a little. Their Imperium is in worse shape than ours, closer to collapse. We should assist. Sanguinius squinted, unconvinced. We still have much to handle. Don't worry. Magnus already set your follow-up tasks in motion. You could be gone for millennia, and nothing would fall apart. More importantly, your gene seed offspring here face extinction. A Tyranid swarm is headed for your homeworld, Baal. If you don't act, Baal and all your Primarch's living sons in this universe will be wiped out. My homeworld? Conquered by Tyranids? What are Tyranids? Sanguinius asked, alarm replacing skepticism. Think of a race more rapacious than Chaos Daemons, more relentless than the Necrons, more numerous than the Orcs, and with strategic and biological adaptability that eclipses humans, comparable in sophistication to the old ones, Axis said. The Tyranids were horrors on a cosmic scale. Understood. I'll go, Sanguinius said. I'll save my offspring and see what level these Tyranids are. No problem. You go save Baal and your sons. I'll go rescue Guilliman, Axis replied. Sanguinius's realization finally clicked. So this is Khan's world, 10,000 years later. Exactly, Axis said. And I've set my friend up well, the Eldari Great Seer for Guilliman. You hold a grudge for a few rude words at a council meeting and call it matchmaking? Sanguinius muttered, half amused. Axis protested that he was doing Guilliman a favor. Yvraine was indeed beautiful. Sanguinius didn't argue further. He tore through the warp and sped toward Baal, wings spread wide. As a subspace god, he moved freely there. Kasha laughed aloud, patting Axis on the shoulder. You're something else, she said. Axis was not one to forgive offenses easily. Kratos, however, looked pale. Father, this is too much, he stammered. Don't be like those other gene seed Primarchs who are impotent. I found a wife for you too, Axis said. What? You mean another Eldari? Kratos couldn't hide his disbelief. Axis shook his head. Relax, she's human. A great beauty, a living saint. Kratos blinked, both stunned and oddly relieved as Axis's grin grew wider. Chapter 3 and 32, the idea of establishing the demon realm, Calgar and Belisarius' call. Well done, Axis. I can't wait to have a daughter-in-law. What about her background? Is she clean? Kasha asked, excited. In truth, she didn't really understand what a living saint was. Haha, isn't she beautiful? Don't worry, her background is absolutely spotless, Axis replied. Axis went on to explain. The Imperium's living saints were equivalent to Huang Lao Han's chosen, beings comparable to greater daemons or daemon princes. More precisely, living saints were like daemon princes because they were resurrected by the Emperor's overwhelming psychic power. Adepta sororitas, or other clerics of the imperial religion, reborn by the Emperor after death. When their physical bodies were destroyed, their souls returned to the warp and reconstituted into new forms with various attributes, essentially identical to daemon princes. The difference was that the power used to create them was holy rather than profane, and they were given angelic wings. Their souls were bound to the Emperor. Kratos listened to his parents' excited chatter and shook his head helplessly. He had never really thought about romance. Before his father and mother returned, his mind had been entirely on the Great Crusade and on caring for his legion. He'd spent his life among immortals and Primarchs, people who didn't speak of love, so he'd never considered marriage. Having a wife arranged by his father made him uncomfortable, but his father wasn't wrong. Father, what exactly is a living saint? Is she like an immortal or a powerful psyker? Kratos asked. How to put it? First, I should explain the Emperor's current state, Axis said. Kasha, your father Neos, Kratos, your grandfather, when he sat upon the golden throne, the changes that occurred. The Emperor is transforming into a chaos god. The Emperor even has his own daemon legions now, and these living saints are similar to the daemon princes formed by the chaos gods. Axis spoke plainly. Huang Lao Han had become essentially a chaos god. He now possessed all the powers that belonged to such an entity. The only thing missing was full immersion in the warp and true omnitemporality across every timeline. When Axis finished, both Kasha and Kratos were stunned. They had expected the national religion to cause controversy, but they had never imagined that after 10,000 years, the Emperor would become something like a warp god with his own daemons and daemon princes, and perhaps even greater daemons to come. Kasha had been partly prepared. Axis had told her some things before. For Kratos, it was harder to accept. In his heart, the Emperor would always be his grandfather, the mortal leader of humanity, not a god. A living saint, then you'd have to build her a body, like you did for the life goddess, right? Kasha mused. Exactly. This time I'll use cultivator seeds, Axis said. Axis, while you were asleep, I spoke with the life goddess Aisha. If it's just an ordinary living form, even if it's demon human prince level, as long as it isn't a god, a powerful life force can make a suitable body for it. The life goddess can do it now. I don't think you need to use cultivator seeds. I always felt uneasy about using those things. Kasha explained. She knew what bodies grown from cultivator seeds really were. Without special materials, they produced monsters. Even if such a living saint kept a human appearance, Kasha couldn't get past the idea. Worse, this woman would likely develop a close, almost filial bond with her husband, so how could she then be presented as his bride? Creating the body through the life goddess's life force felt more appropriate to Kasha. Your concerns make sense, Axis admitted. It's possible. I've mastered the god of Chi now, so making a body isn't that difficult. Women tended to think in more nuanced ways than men. Kasha had considered things Axis hadn't. The default form from cultivator seeds was unattractive, no matter how much human bloodline it absorbed. Using a living force to craft a natural, truly human body was a better solution. Axis had become a god in his own right, so any body he fashioned would be essentially immortal. The only caveat was that the living saint's soul remained bound to the Emperor. Even if the body was destroyed, she could be resurrected through him. With the Emperor and Axis protecting her, Axis was confident nothing could threaten his son's future wife. Then let's not waste time. We'll travel to Macragge now, Axis said. That boy Gilliman was felled 10,000 years ago by a single sword. Let's wake him. Agreed. Let's go, Kasha answered. Father, please listen to me. I think I should meet Lady Celestine first and make my own decision. Isn't this a bit hasty? Kratos protested, exasperated. Your opinion is noted, Axis said with a wave, then grabbed Kasha with one hand and Kratos with the other and tore through the warp. Now, with the god of Chi to protect them, Axis could move freely through the warp. He wrapped them in his divine aura, insulating them from the warp's corrosive energies, and guided them through the Sea of Souls. The place wasn't at all the beautiful, ethereal vista Kratos had imagined. The Sea of Souls was sodden and polluted, filled with warped monsters. When the creatures saw Axis and the others, they showed immediate greed, surged forward, and were burned to ash by Axis's powers. After feeling the authority of the god of Chi, the remaining daemons grew docile and kept their distance. To be honest, Father, without those filthy daemons, this place would be beautiful, Kratos said, scanning the true warp scenery. Without the deformed monsters, the Sea of Souls would be wondrous. After death, human souls passed here, became sustenance for daemons, or dissolved into pure soul energy. One day I will cleanse the Sea of Souls, Axis promised. He planned to use his divine power to create a separate realm, a demon realm, and drive the filthy daemons into it. The Sea of Souls was meant to be a resting place for human spirits, not a feeding ground. Even if the Chaos Gods were destroyed, daemons would still be born as long as sentient beings harbored dark, degenerate emotions. As long as life existed in the real universe, daemons could arise. A dedicated demon realm was necessary to contain them. I look forward to that day, Father. I hope our family can walk freely in the restored Sea of Souls, Kratos said. Ha ha! We will. I will make it happen, Axis said, patting his son's head. Time had no meaning in the warp. Axis led his family toward Macragge. At the same moment, High Magos Belisarius Call, the Eldar seer Yvraine, Inquisitor Greyfax, and a unit of Black Templars had also arrived at Macragge after separate detours. They had to inform the Ultramarines that Cadia had fallen, and that Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade had wrought devastation across the Imperium. They were escorted to Fortress Hera and presented before Chapter Master Calgar. "Enough talk," Calgar said, eyeing the unusual assembly. A High Magos of the Mechanicus, an Inquisitor returned after centuries, an Imperial Living Saint, a Black Templars Marshal, and 2 Xenos. If Chief Librarian Tigurius hadn't vouched for their mission's importance, Calgar might already have arrested them. "Macragge is under attack by Chaos fleets. I need to know your purpose here." "I am here to fulfill an agreement with the Lord of Macragge," High Magos Belisarius Call said. "An agreement?" "High Magos, I don't recall us making any agreement with you," Calgar answered, surprised. "Not with you, Chapter Master Calgar. With the true Lord of Macragge, the Primarch of the Ultramarines, Lord Robout Guilliman," Belisarius replied. "What?" Calgar could hardly believe it. This involved the Gene Father himself. 10,000 years ago, when Lord Guilliman went to duel Fulgrim, he entrusted me with several secret tasks. One of them was to revive him, should that become necessary. I have come to fulfill that pledge. Chapter Master Calgar, we must see the King of Ultramar." Calgar's face darkened as he stared at the High Magos of the Mechanicus, disbelief and displeasure plain in his expression. If Belisarius Call had told him this in private, Calgar might have believed him and accepted the chance to meet his Gene Father, Robert Guilliman, the great King of Ultramar. But the combination of facts was too strange, and the presence of 2 Xenos made it worse. How could anyone leak a matter like this to aliens? "This is the Corpse Emperor's will. The great King of Ultramar, the son of the Corpse Emperor, who has slept for 10,000 years, will awaken. It will be today, right here. So, Calgar, take us to see Lord Guilliman," the living Saint Celestine announced, waving the longsword in her hand. Her presence here was by the Corpse Emperor's command. Otherwise, after Cadia's fall, she would have returned to the warp and awaited further instruction. Around them, the Grand Marshal of the Black Templars and Inquisitor Greyfax stared at Belisarius Call with shocked faces. The High Magos had kept the purpose of this journey secret from them. They had thought Calgar was only stopping to resupply before returning to Holy Terra. "Then those 2 Xenos will stay here. I will take you to see Lord Guilliman," Calgar said. With the Gene Father's awakening at stake, he had to be cautious. Bringing the High Magos, Belisarius Call, and a living saint to meet Guilliman was one thing. Allowing the 2 aliens anywhere near the Gene Seed Primarch was another. "Whether you believe it or not, we are here to help, and without our help, Robert Guilliman cannot awaken," Yvraine said. Their arrival in the Ultramar 500 worlds had a clear purpose: to complete the task the Eldar death god Elian had set for her. The newly formed Death Guard needed humanity to stand in the vanguard, drawing Chaos's attention so the Death Guard could retrieve the 5 Khorne swords, awaken the Eldar Death God, and defeat their great enemy. "Impossible! You 2 foul Xenos. I allowed you into Fortress Hera only as an act of extreme leniency. Not shooting you on sight was already mercy. Now get out," Calgar roared. "Chapter Master Calgar, this is the Corpse Emperor's will. The help of these 2 is essential for the Gene Seed Primarch to be resurrected. Without them, the Primarch cannot awaken properly," Celestine said. Belisarius Call, standing to one side, looked thoughtful. Strictly speaking, his armor of fate should be able to revive Guilliman. But he had a recollection, a meeting with the Corpse Emperor in the psychic realm, and he knew the living saint's presence now mattered. The Corpse Emperor's sword had come into his hands, and by some unseen force had been taken to Macragge to be given to the awakened Primarch. Everything for this revival needed to follow the Corpse Emperor's plan. "This is absolutely impossible. I will not allow you within a single step of the Gene Seed Primarch," Calgar repeated, fingers tightening around his power fist. Before he could drive them off, Chief Librarian Tigurius, standing nearby, spoke. "Chapter Master, please trust me this once. Trust your most powerful librarian. This is the Corpse Emperor's will. What we are about to do will save the entire Imperium of Man." Tigurius and Calgar had served together for centuries. Calgar knew the librarian's prescience had warned them before the Chaos Fleet's attack on Macragge, giving the Ultramarines time to prepare. Tigurius's words carried more weight than anyone else's. Calgar's face went ashen. He wanted to argue, but the memory of that long companionship held him back. All right, old friend, but know this, I will be watching every one of you. If any of you so much as make a treacherous move, my power fist will smash you to scrap. That's not certain, Yvraine smiled. Her way of saving Guilliman would be unusual, and Calgar's threats would not stop her. There was no alternative. To revive the Geneseed Primarch, he would have to die once first. She had to do what needed doing. A sudden golden light descended. Celestine froze, lifted from the floor, and hovering as a powerful sacred will made itself known. Everyone trembled and fell to their knees. Weaker mortal soldiers fainted outright. Great Corpse Emperor, is this real? Celestine's face shone with awe and confusion. The message the Corpse Emperor conveyed seemed meant for her. Everyone assumed it had to do with the Geneseed Primarch. I understand, Great Corpse Emperor, I will obey, Celestine said, kneeling on one knee. Her heart churned. As a living saint who had served the Corpse Emperor for 1,000 years, she was used to being sent to bolster warriors on battlefields. This time's command, however, was unlike any she had served before. It concerned marriage. She glanced toward the Eldar Great Seer at her side. The idea was bewildering, and yet it could make sense. The Corpse Emperor had apparently reached an accord with the Eldar Death God. If a marital alliance was required, these two seemed the intended candidates. Inquisitor, Investigator Greyfax whispered, hardly able to contain her excitement as she remained kneeling. The Black Templar's Expeditionary Marshal and even Chapter Master Calgar shouted, "Long live the Corpse Emperor," while on their knees. Tigurius asked, "Living Saint, what are the Corpse Emperor's instructions?" If the command was conveyed aloud, he could use it to persuade Calgar more firmly. The Corpse Emperor conveyed two messages, Celestine said, cheeks flushing as if shy. Her hesitation puzzled everyone. "Lady Celestine, speak. Tell us the Corpse Emperor's will," Greyfax urged. "He intends to form an alliance with the Eldar. The two Eldar may come with us to meet the Geneseed Primarch and," Celestine faltered. Everyone leaned forward, waiting. "The Corpse Emperor has decreed that after the Ultramarines apply, Geneseed Primarch Robert Guilliman awakens, he will marry the Death Guard Great Seer, Yvraine," Celestine declared. Silence slammed down in the hall. Calgar stared at her with a look of disbelief, outrage, and contempt. The Black Templar's marshal's face went grim. Greyfax, hand at her hip, looked ready to draw a weapon. Even Tigurius seemed stunned. The declaration was outrageous. "Shut up, you heretic! How dare you!" Calgar snapped and raised his power fist as if to strike the living saint for defaming his gene-father. Even Yvraine, who had expected resistance, looked bewildered. What on earth was the Corpse Emperor playing at? The red-armored warrior guarding Yvraine boiled with fury for another reason. He had been her sword instructor and secretly loved his pupil. He stood rigid, chest-heaving. "This has nothing to do with me," Yvraine said coolly. "I'm here to make Guilliman awaken. I don't plan to enter into any marriage with you humans. It may be hard to accept, but this is the Corpse Emperor's will, and I haven't finished conveying it," Celestine said. "Shut up, you damned," Calgar began. A violent warp ripple tore through the chamber. A rift opened, and through it, a pair of large feet descended, interrupting the chapter master's outburst. 3 strangers, 2 men and a woman, appeared, the lead man thrusting his foot down on Calgar. No matter how Calgar struggled, he could not dislodge the boot. "Quiet. Now I will convey the Corpse Emperor's will. All of you, obey my command," the man called Axis said. Axis made a spectacular entrance that froze everyone in the chamber. All at once, clicks and whirs filled the air as every hand except Living Saint Celestine's moved to aim weapons at him. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Chief Librarian Tigurius of the Ultramarines demanded, clutching his psychic staff and regarding Axis warily. The man before him radiated danger, an almost physical certainty that a single wrong move would be the last. "Release Chapter Master Calgar at once, you reckless madman," the Grand Marshal of the Black Templars roared, drawing his power sword. The Ultramarines drew their bolt guns and trained fire on Axis. Through the psychic link, Kratos whispered urgently, "Father, could you move your foot? Please, you're standing on our Chapter Master." "What do you know, child? Striking first is the point. I have to overwhelm them with my aura," Axis replied. He wanted to warn Guilliman's line that his presence demanded obedience. "Cut the theatrics, Axis. Get on with it. I think they're about to strike." Kasha said helplessly over the link. Before anyone could act, Axis's body erupted in a golden radiance, a flicker of the legendary Super Saiyan aura flaring out from him. An oppressive pressure descended that took the breath from every lung. Heads swam, eyes blurred, people dropped to their knees, trembling and slick with cold sweat. Inquisitor Greyfax, the Black Templar's Grand Marshal, several Ultramarines, even Tigurius himself, the Eldari Seer Yvrain, and the red-armored warrior all bowed before that force. Many tried to resist, to grit their teeth and stand, but an invisible load forced them down. Tigurius, however, could feel the true weight of it. Axis had the presence of a legendary Super Saiyan unveiled for the first time. Kasha and another observer named Mater also felt it. Tigurius's face went ashen. His body shook as terror flooded his mind, the certainty of annihilation, of being cleaved away the instant he resisted. Any defiance would mean death. "Lord Axis, please stop. They do not know your identity," Living Saint Celestine pleaded. Celestine squinted at Axis, trying to reconcile what she saw with the story she'd been told. Could this be the new Geneseed Primarch the Emperor had fashioned? His build didn't match the legends. He was only about the height of a regular Astartes, even a little shorter. The larger figure beside him must be Kratos. Her heart fluttered. "My future husband," she thought. Axis smiled and withdrew the blast of aura. "Since my daughter asked, I'll spare your lives for now. Count on my mercy." His calling Celestine his daughter provoked outrage. A sister of battle accompanying the Living Saint sprang forward with a roar. "Blasphemer! The Living Saint has only one father, the God Emperor. How dare you call her your daughter?" A dozen sisters leveled their weapons at Axis, but Celestine laid a calming hand on their barrels. "I am her daughter," Axis repeated calmly. "It isn't strictly wrong." She had entered his household and been bound to his son. In Axis's mind, that made her his daughter. Celestine glanced at Axis and, rolling her eyes, stepped in to introduce him properly. "This is Axis, the new Geneseed Primarch fashioned by the Emperor," she declared. She had intended to call him the second Primarch, as the Emperor had once hinted, but Axis had insisted on a different formulation, a new Geneseed Primarch, and had made it plain with psychic authority that Kratos was the son of Kasha, the Emperor's daughter, and therefore the Emperor's grandson. Celestine could only shrug and comply. If the Emperor's will said it, she would obey. Inquisitor Greyfax's expression curdled. "A new Geneseed Primarch? The Emperor has sat on the Golden Throne for 10,000 years. How could he create another Primarch?" Greyfax said. Primarchs were supposed to tower above Astartes at over 3.6 meters. This man did not look the part. To Greyfax and some others, Celestine's proclamation was madness, or worse, evidence of corruption by chaos. Two Eldari, including Yvrain, watched with bright amusement. The red-armored warrior studied his disciple with worried eyes. If the Eldari gods were truly apparently allied to mankind, what would that mean for his student's secret hopes? Celestine, driven by a fear of bloodshed, spoke in a rush. "Lord Axis is a Geneseed Primarch modified by the Emperor. His Geneseed, if harvested, could found a new Astartes legion. Lord Kratos is Axis's son by the Emperor's daughter, Imperial Princess Kasha, and so he is of the Emperor's bloodline, his grandson. I am betrothed to Kratos. In the Emperor's name, I will marry the Emperor's grandson." She spilled everything at once. Better to lay it out than let tempers flare. Kratos, standing near Axis, sighed, and then golden light burst from him. His hair shone like spun metal as a soaring, divine psychic presence rolled out into the room. Unlike Axis's raw Super Saiyan pressure, Kratos' aura carried that same blessing, plus the Emperor's psychic signature. Once Kratos transformed, the amplification of his power, a 50-fold surge, made his psychic might rival what the Emperor had once wielded among mortals. The air went still. Humans present felt it touch them with reverence. Kasha, abiding by this revelation, released her own divine psychic presence as well. "I am Imperial Princess Kasha," she announced simply. "I was born during the Liberation War of Holy Terra." Greyfax staggered back, incredulous. "This is blasphemy! You have stolen the Emperor's power somehow." Axis's patience snapped. A cold snort and the flick of a finger sent the Inquisitor spitting blood. She flew backward, crashed into a support, and slumped to the floor, gasping. "Choose your words carefully," Axis warned. "Next time I will not be so merciful." Tigurius, jaw clenched, demanded proof. The power Axis had displayed was terrifying beyond measure. Even so, Celestine vouched for him, and the psychic signatures present were unmistakable. Axis inhaled, channeling chi into his cells, and his bones and muscles swelled. In the blink of an eye, he grew into a titanic figure roughly 3.8 meters tall. His new bulk cast an oppressive shadow, the body a living claim to Primarchhood. At the same moment, a more sacred, golden light descended. Kasha and Kratos glowed with holy radiance. Celestine spread her pure white wings. The room's skepticism dissolved. Axis was a gene seed Primarch of the New Age, and Kratos and Kasha were the Emperor's grandson and daughter. The Emperor's line had returned. "Great gene seed Primarch, what is your name?" Tigurius asked, stepping forward. "Axis," he said. "Lord Axis, would you please move your foot so our chapter master can stand?" Tigurius added, pointing at Calgar, who had been pinned beneath Axis's boot. Axis shrugged. "Oh, I didn't notice I was standing on someone. Is he your chapter master?" He shifted his foot without ceremony, and Calgar scrambled to his feet, pale with fury. Calgar bristled. Tigurius hustled him aside, smoothing tempers. "Our chapter master has a hot temper, Lord Axis. Forgive him." Axis waved him off. "No matter. I won't stoop to a child's level." Kratos watched his father with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. Uncle Guilliman had made a grave mistake by crossing his father. Calgar's restraint snapped once more inwardly, but he held himself. Axis turned to business. "Take me to Guilliman. I'll wake him up." They descended to the lowest, most sacred chamber of the fortress, the resting place of the great Gene Father Robert Guilliman. Calgar halted at the stasis that held the Primarch in suspended slumber. "How will you rouse him?" Calgar asked. "Leave it to me," Yvraine said, drawing her weapon. Axis waved her back. "This is a human matter. No interference required. After I rouse him, you two can have some private time to talk and build a relationship. You should get along. He's just a big boy." Yvraine snorted. "No such oracle reached me." Axis grinned. "Once I've beaten some sense into this child, Guilliman, I'll speak to your death god and ask about prophecies. Just prepare the invitations." Then, in front of everyone, Axis strode to the stasis field, dragged the naked Primarch out of his suspension, and slapped rowboat Guilliman twice across the face. "Why are you sleeping? Wake up and party." Chapter 335. Guilliman wakes up. The Emperor's long-distance call. "Guilliman, your old man is calling you in to work overtime." Axis's words left everyone frozen. Calgar and Tigurius both stood motionless, staring at Axis with expressions that mixed bewilderment, disbelief, anger, and shock. Even Kratos, who usually showed nothing, had his mouth twitch with indignation. This bastard was beyond the pale. Then Axis did the unforgivable. He slapped Guilliman twice. Miraculously, Guilliman's brows twitched. Axis nodded as if satisfied, and slapped him twice more. This time, Guilliman came fully awake, blinking and looking around in a daze, as if asking, "Who am I? Where am I? What is happening? This is impossible." Yvraine, the Eldari standing nearby, swore aloud. "You're kidding. He woke the Primarch with a couple of slaps? What manner of joke is this?" Even the Ultramarines nearest to Guilliman stared, some dropping their bolters, mouths open. Their Gene Father, sleeping for 10,000 years, had gotten up after a few slaps. It was absurd. Axis, utterly unconcerned with propriety, went on talking as if lecturing. "You see, when someone sleeps too long, this is how you wake them. You slap them a few times. If you don't, they won't wake up. Do you know why your Gene Father slept for so long? Because none of you dared go and give him 2 slaps. That's all it takes. He deserved a nap for 10,000 years." Of course, the real reason Guilliman woke was not merely the slaps. When Axis lifted him, he had already begun transmitting the principle of life. He used his God of Chi power to strip away Slanesh's taint, and he repaired Guilliman's body. But Axis liked to present himself as willful and arrogant, and so that was his story. Tigurius and Calgar found Axis's explanation ridiculous, but the outcome was obvious. Guilliman was awake. Someone, however, had failed to notice one detail. Guilliman was still naked. "Lord Axis, shouldn't our Gene Father have some trousers?" someone muttered. "Indecent and tasteless. Who are you?" Guilliman demanded as he became fully aware. As a Primarch of the Gene Seed, merely observing the scene gave him a rough sense of what had happened. High Magos Belisarius Call's mechanical eyes flickered. "That, my Lord Guilliman, was my intent. I forged an armor of fate for you. If you would accept it—" Guilliman cut him off. Thank you for your work, but could you please set me down? This is rather undignified. No problem. 13. Come on, you know. When you sleep, you shouldn't sleep in your birthday suit. At least wear pants. Axis clapped as Gilliman was put down. Gilliman ignored Axis's chiding and accepted Call's help. With the Magos' assistance, he donned the armor of fate and took up the Emperor's sword, the blade given to him by the Emperor. While he fitted the power armor, his mind raced. Who was this man who had woken him? Why did he seem oddly familiar? He looked about the size of a space marine, but the power he radiated was intimidating, strong enough that, even when Axis had lifted him by the neck, Gilliman could not resist. Introduce yourself, Gilliman said bluntly. Of course, Axis replied with a smile. I'm a gene seed Primarch of the New Age, and your brother-in-law. Gilliman frowned. I don't recall ever having an older sister. If you are a new gene seed Primarch, has Father descended from the Golden Throne? Or were you not created by him? It's complicated, Axis said. Come, let me put you in touch with the Emperor himself. Axis laid a hand on Gilliman's shoulder and, without ceremony, opened a psychic link to the Golden Throne. Power like that can do whatever it likes. Gilliman felt a burning in his soul as the Emperor's psychic presence washed over him. Axis's power immediately erected a protective shield, tempering the Emperor's overwhelming force. My son, a voice intoned. The Imperium's only hope, another voice added. Experimental subject number 13, a colder undertone murmured. Thief, traitor, yet another rasp hissed. Axis snorted and cut through the dissonance. Enough. Don't let your dark facets loose. Your main self is still there and fully conscious. He dispelled the Emperor's shadowed personalities, the darker aspects that had accrued over 10,000 years on the Golden Throne, fed by the daily sacrifice of 1,000 psychers. The Emperor's voice steadied. Your power exceeds my expectations. Perhaps you should come to the Golden Throne. We can speak. Gilliman looked up at the enormous golden visage that shimmered into being, vague at the edges but unmistakable. Father, are you truly you? I have a mission, the Emperor said. You must save the decaying Imperium, put it back on course. You are the regent, the only hope. Return to Holy Terra. Gilliman listened as the Emperor summarized the Imperium's desperate state and urged his swift return to Terra. I understand, Father. But Axis, who is he? I can feel his power. It's not far from what you had. He was modified by me, the Emperor answered. But his genesis differs from yours. He was made from a human child, altered after birth into a gene seed Primarch. I will tell you more later. For now, know that he is trustworthy. The Emperor personally vouched for Axis's identity, easing Gilliman's doubts. And Kasha, my supposed sister? Gilliman asked. Was she one of your gene seed Primarchs? Kasha was not a gene seed Primarch created by me, the Emperor said. She is my daughter, born of Ada. Her son Kratos inherited a sliver of my psychic power and my line. He is my grandson. With that acknowledged, Guilliman ended the brief communion. The link snapped, but the sting of it remained. The Emperor's psychic flame had burned into him, and the memory of those dark aspects lingered. Where Axis stood, golden light rose, and briefly, an enormous shining figure manifested for all to see. Those present, humans, Kratos, Kasha, fell to one knee, honoring the man who had endured 10,000 years upon the Golden Throne. Their Emperor, their grandfather, their father. I have confirmed his identity, Gilliman said, nodding toward Axis. In this dark age, it is an honor that you have returned to the Imperium to aid me. Don't be so formal, Axis replied. Those Chaos Space Marine traitors out there still need sorting. Go stretch your new limbs. Gilliman's jaw set. Freshly awake, he needed targets to strike. Traitors, I will deal with them myself. All Ultramarines, follow me. Axis, Kasha, Kratos, come with us. Kasha and Kratos can assist you, Axis said, waving one hand. As for me, I have other arrangements. I must meet with the Eldari gods to discuss your marriage to Yvraine. Marriage? Gilliman sputtered, utterly taken aback. Eldari? What do you mean, Axis? Chapter 336. Look at the stubborn great prophet of the Death Army with new eyes. What's the fuss? It's exactly as it sounds. Your marriage. The Emperor forgot to tell you early, but you aren't getting any younger. It's time to find you a wife, Axis said with a smile. At those words, Gilliman, who had been brimming with vigor and ready to march out and crush the traitors of chaos, stopped cold. His face tightened into a frown. Wait, this isn't the issue. The issue is that she's an Eldar, an alien. Guilliman would sooner die than marry a Xenos. What exactly is going on? Father didn't mention this, Guilliman demanded. I'm telling you now. Humanity needs allies. The galaxy is 10 times more dangerous and 10 times more chaotic than you remember. To survive, we must band together, Axis replied. We can talk about this later. I don't think that Eldar lady will be keen on the idea either, Guilliman snapped. And without giving Axis a chance to continue, he shouldered the Emperor's sword and strode outside. He needed to rally the Ultramarines and launch a counterattack against the great enemy, Chaos. Axis only smiled and turned his attention to Yvraine. The red-armored warrior who accompanied her was visibly nervous, one hand on the hilt of his blade, but he was sweating in spite of himself. Facing Axis, he found he had no courage to draw steel. Axis's presence alone pinned him in place. The man before him was terrifying, truly terrifying. Was this the power of a human Primarch? 10,000 years ago, the Eldar seers had foreseen that a future gene-seed Primarch, the one who would become the Khorne daemon Prince Angron, would unleash a bloodbath across the universe. They had sent assassins to strike the Primarch in childhood, but their plan failed. Even as a child, this Primarch's might left the fully armed, well-trained Eldar utterly helpless. The Primarchs had shocked the Eldar to their core. To the Eldar, the Emperor was a madman who had sealed gods of the warp in mortal bodies. Eldar, strong in psychic perception, saw what humans could not. Where humans saw giants and demigods, the Eldar saw monsters of the warp trapped in flesh. Yet Axis puzzled them. He looked like a normal man. Neither the red-armored warrior nor the death-seer Yvraine could sense any psychic power from him. Axis walked past the red-armored warrior with nothing more than a smile. The warrior ground his teeth and tried to move, tried to place himself between Axis and his student, but his body would not obey. "You're quite perverse," Axis said lightly to the red-armored warrior. "In human terms, that's called an old ox eating young grass. Fortunately, you didn't get the chance." Eldar society forbade romantic love. Even relations for procreation were devoid of personal feeling, mechanical and emotionless. Any emotional stir, the slightest pleasure, risked attracting Slanesh and devouring the soul. So love, as humans understood it, did not exist among the Eldar, and the raising of children required a calculated, often communal feeding of life force. From Axis's human perspective, that system was bizarre and elaborate. "You," the warrior snarled, though his voice lacked the force to scare anyone. "You are a formidable being. How do you expect to convince me?" Yvraine asked, looking at Axis with a faint, challenging smile. She knew she could not resist his power. Standing before him, she felt helpless, but she would not yield easily. If something must be done to serve her people, it would be done with eyes open. "I need to speak with your death god through you," Axis said. "Don't be afraid. It will be a little painful, but brief." "Oh, that sentence could be read the wrong way, but I won't resist. Do as you must," Yvraine said. Years in Kamara, ruled by the Dark Eldar, had stripped away any illusions of innocence. She was no shrinking violet. She could shock a human with her openness. Axis did not answer. He placed a hand on Yvraine's shoulder, and a luminous power flowed into her, making her body tremble. Yvraine smiled through clenched teeth, face pale as the power worked through her. Then she straightened, chest proud and head held high, composed, resolute. Axis looked at the great seer of the Death Host with new respect. She was not simple. No wonder she had dared to tease the regent after Guilliman woke and serve as his advisor. Axis searched for the presence of Iniad, the death god, and found it. A crimson light suffused Axis. For a brief moment, he seemed to shrink in stature, but grow all the more sacred and solemn. To the Eldar watching, Axis took on the air of a deity, like a true god they had once glimpsed. How could a god have a physical form in the material universe? And why would this body not resemble that of a worshipper? The Eldar had never heard that humanity had gods besides the Emperor. "Your courage is admirable, young one," Axis said softly. "Don't call me young. You can't be much older than I am." "I feel it. I'm nearly 1,000 years old," Yvraine replied, trembling as pain and a prickling sensation ran through her soul. Still she smiled and endured it. "I existed 10,000 years ago," Axis said. "Perhaps," she countered, "but my intuition says you're not much older than me." The red-armored warrior looked on with a face contorted between anger and helplessness. Was this really the time to provoke their lord? His student's fierce spirit had always been her charm, irresistible to him, but today his frustration was visible. Axis did nothing more than concentrate. Through his power, he locked on to Yniad. Reaching inward, he drew something out of Yvraine, a grayish-white figure that coalesced and stepped into the material world. "This is impossible," Yniad murmured, aghast. "I appear in the real universe in this form? What power is this? How do I possess a true body?" Yniad had not yet been born. For Yniad to be born, the Eldar would have to pay a terrible price, sacrificing the countless lives of their race to tear themselves free from Slaanesh's grip. There was an alternative: gather the 5 Khorne swords and reform into a powerful Eldar god. Yet here he stood, full and self-aware in the material universe, already in a state approaching revival. If he could enter the warp and absorb enough power, he might become a demigod. "I've come to discuss an alliance between the Eldar and humanity," Axis said. "My relationship with the life goddess is special. I gave the life goddess a body that can walk in the real universe." "The life goddess? Aisha? Impossible. She is still trapped in Nurgle's garden." 10,000 years have passed," Yniad replied, shaking his head. "I'm not speaking of the life goddess of this world, but of another. I am from a parallel universe," Axis said plainly. He hid nothing. The Eldar were perceptive enough that half-truths would be discovered. Axis's nature disliked concealment. A being from another universe. Remarkable. "How do you propose to form an alliance?" Yniad asked. "You have no suitable body here. I can create one for you by special means, so you can exert most of your power in the real universe. You could appear to lead your people, and as part of this arrangement, your Death Host's great seer will marry a human," Axis offered. In a heartbeat, Yvraine's eyes flashed, and she spoke through clenched teeth, fierce and determined. "In that case, Lord Death God, I will marry Lord Axis." She had regained control of herself. No one would dictate her destiny. If anyone told her whom to wed, she would defiantly do the opposite, except now she chose freely. Axis narrowed his eyes as he assessed her resolve. Chapter 337, God is Beyond Doubt. "You and Guilliman are a perfect match. Drain him dry." A terrifying pressure fell over Yvraine. The great seer of the Death Guard felt as if she had been thrust into an ice cellar. Her body trembled uncontrollably, and she sank to her knees. Sweat soaked the small of her back. Her eyes were wide with fear, and her gaze toward Axis was filled with terror. In that moment she understood. The man had not been playing at all. The pressure she had felt earlier had been within her limits, but if it had exceeded them, she could not have withstood it. Her remaining shred of pride evaporated. "Little girl," Axis said, "first let me make one thing clear. In this world, only the strong control their own destinies. I am strong, and you are weak. When I say 1, it is 1. When I say 2, it is 2. Besides, I have a wife whom I love dearly. I have no interest in you." Yvraine's stubbornness had earned a sliver of Axis's regard, but daring to bargain with him because of that hint of favor was foolish. He would be gentle with others. He would not be gentle with her. In his world, the weak had no right to decide for themselves. How strong was Axis right now? To put it bluntly, which of the 4 Chaos Gods would dare challenge him one-on-one? Axis had effectively become godlike, more than a caricature of a Super Saiyan god, refined by 300 years of mastering divine power until his body and soul were utterly transformed. Combined with his legendary Super Saiyan bloodline and the raw pressure of his true form, no mortal could withstand him. "Lord Axis," Yvraine managed through clenched teeth, "I only want to choose my own fate. I don't want to marry that Robert Guilliman. We're not compatible. He's 3.6 meters tall, and I'm only 2 meters. I'd be crushed. If you insist on an alliance with our Eldar, I'll accept being your son's wife. That way, I keep some choice." What a miscalculation. She had thought her defiance might win him over. Instead, it only confirmed his disinterest. If Axis would not have her, she could at least take second best. "My son's wife is the living saint of the Imperium," Axis said coldly, crouching to look down at her. "Your match will be the human gene seed Primarch, Robert Guilliman. This is my final warning. Understand?" From beginning to end, the Death God Need said not a word to his great seer. In his view, Axis' position was already more than generous. Daring to contradict a god was tantamount to placing one's life on the line. If Axis chose to kill Yvraine, Ennead would not intervene. No one insulted a god. No one challenged a god's dignity. I understand, Yvraine whispered, teeth gritted. Robert Guilliman was not a terrible prospect. She had met him only once, but a small, curious goodwill had lingered. Part of her even suspected Axis might have used influence to sway her feelings. Don't doubt it, Yvraine, Ennead said. You and the human gene seed Primarch Robert Guilliman are fated. Your marriage will benefit both the Eldar and humanity. You will become the regent consort of humanity, that is to say, regent consort. Ennead deliberately stressed the title. Her mind had been muddled. Axis's power was vast. She was not fit to be his consort. His son would go to another universe in the future, and she, as Ennead's great seer, could not abandon her people. Becoming Robert Guilliman's regent consort and securing a revered place in the Imperium was the correct path. You mean I really have a destiny with Robert Guilliman? Yvraine asked, stunned. You need not doubt. I have glimpsed futures. In time, you will come to like this gene-seed Primarch, Ennead replied. There was reason humanity had chosen Yvraine. The human emperor and Axis had both seen the possible futures. I accept, Lord Axis. I apologize for my impudence. I only wanted a little freedom of choice, Yvraine said. With the great death god's words, her last doubts vanished. She could use this, get closer to Guilliman and learn him better. I forgive your rashness, Axis said. And as to your worry about withstanding the Primarch's strength, that's easy to fix. Axis produced a spirit tree fruit from his personal space and offered it to the Great Seer. Ordinary Eldar were not weak by human standards. The strongest among them could match Primaris Marines. As Ennead's Great Seer, Yvraine's body had been restored after death and was already exceptional. Yet even she might suffer grievous harm if struck directly by a gene-seed Primarch. Axis had to ensure she could survive their consummation without fatal consequences. A spirit tree fruit would do the job. This is a spirit tree fruit, Axis explained, a divine fruit that greatly amplifies vitality and physical power. With it, when you and Guilliman engage, it will be safe. Oh, then I am relieved, Yvraine said, standing with graceful composure as she accepted it. If we can only be married without that aspect, our bond won't be too fierce. Beneath her composure, Eldar souls who had joined Ennead were protected. Slaanesh could not claim them, and the marriage would be under the protection of the god standing before her. If Slaanesh absorbed her soul, it would be an affront to this god. Eat it now. Let's see how it works, Axis ordered. Thank you for your grace, Prince Axis, she said, changing how she addressed him, no longer Lord, but Prince, an honorific fit for a god. Under his gaze, she ate the second-generation spirit tree fruit. A terrifying life energy flooded her limbs. Vitality surged through her, muscles tightening, bones hardening, the very limits of Eldar physiology reshaping. Yvraine floated several inches off the ground as her life essence evolved, climbing from near immortality to something approaching a full demigod. She grew slightly taller, now around 2.5 meters, and her skin brightened and smoothed, her radiance intensified. Incredible, Prince Axis, she breathed. My body, everything has changed. I feel immense power running through me. She drew a deep breath, clenched her fists, and tested herself. Her strength had increased at least tenfold. It was perfect. Obeying a god had brought clear, tangible rewards. She had been foolish to resist. Marriage was marriage. Who she married mattered less than the position and protection she gained. If Axis did not fancy her, there was nothing she could have done. Your current strength will render the gene-seed Primarch helpless in bed. Go and deal with Guilliman. I have high hopes for you, Axis said. Oh, Prince Axis, if I have one more of these, I guarantee he'll be utterly defeated every night he fights with me, Yvraine said with a sly, confident smile. Axis seemed to take a faint, mischievous delight in Guilliman's potential discomfort, and she felt emboldened. The Eldar had many ways of winning affection. Ha! Good, take a few more. Axis laughed and produced 3 more second-generation spirit tree fruits, pressing them into her hands. When Guilliman could not handle her and his body failed him, Axis would later give the Primarch some fruits of his own. It would be amusing. Your bond will be strong in the future, Axis continued. Once a man has his own children, he changes. Guilliman has produced tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of gene seed offspring. But those are gene seed progeny, not real sons. According to a streamer's calculation, 75% of the space marines in the galaxy might be Guilliman's offspring. Given 10,000 years, hundreds of millions isn't impossible. That probability is still low, Yniad replied. Eldar and humans have reproductive barriers. Offspring are almost impossible. If the life goddess helps, if we can harness her life energy, then you and Guilliman could have children. No problem, Axis said. He not only wanted to stage Guilliman's marriage, he wanted to ensure Guilliman produced biological offspring. Prince Axis, do you mean you want to help us rescue the Eldar life goddess? Yniad asked, shocked. That's right, Axis said. The life goddess's life energy is invaluable, useful to me beyond measure. I want to rescue her. With slight alteration, her life force could help establish a world king god, a talent unique in the universe. There was only one god who commanded life energy. And no, Axis was not interested in Nurgle's domain. If so, I can help, with the laughing god alongside, Yniad said, excited. Axis smiled inwardly. Help would be welcome, but once the life goddess was out of reach, she would belong to him. He was taking her. Rescuing the Great Mother is every Eldar's duty, Yvrain added. I want to participate too, Prince Axis. Prince Yniad. You can help in a small way, Axis said. It would be entertaining to tangle with Nurgle's rotters during the Plague War. Two gods and a great seer discussed strategy while the red-armored warrior, alone and grieving, suffered, his beloved disciple lost forever. Death god Yniad, Axis said, turning to the deity, I can fashion a more suitable body for you by special means. It will allow you to exert far greater power in the real universe, much more than any mere avatar. Are you interested? With Yniad's emergence, Slaanesh should be the most unsettled of the Chaos gods. Prophecy had marked Yniad as the one destined to kill Slaanesh. A true, real-world body would change everything. If possible, I would be most grateful, Yniad said. You're welcome. Axis smiled, produced a second-generation cultivator seed, and immediately began planting it where Guilliman slept. He tore up the floor with ruthless force, revealing soil beneath. He planted the seed, poured in a nutrient solution made from second-generation spirit tree fruit juice, and asked Yvrain for a drop of blood to provide a genetic sample. Then Axis poured in his own potent life energy and threaded the death god's spirit into the seed. Moments later, a new Eldar death god emerged, nearly 3 meters tall, divine, and with a proper physical body in reality. It differed from the life goddess in one respect. It had no chi energy. The seed had become a body. The death god had a new foothold in the real universe. Chapter 338, Eldar Death God, the human army bathed in holy light. The Eldar Death God, Yniad felt it, a powerful vessel, a body that could manifest at least 80% of his divine power in the real universe. The fruit Yvrain had just eaten should further amplify that body's strength. If so, reaching a full 100% wouldn't be out of the question. For a subspace god, a physical form capable of deploying 100% of its combat power in the real universe was priceless. With such a body, Yniad might genuinely have a chance to kill, or even surpass Slaanesh. Axis watched Yniad with a smile. Like all cultivators, Yniad had been nourished by a life of chi, in other words, an advanced god of chi, and that created an odd bond with Axis. Axis, however, had suppressed that connection with his god of power, so the Eldar death god felt nothing. Yniad did not immediately acknowledge Axis as his gene father, as life goddess Aisha had. It was a card Axis kept tucked away to use on other subspace gods later. Cultivators and Axis were deeply entangled. Even second-generation cultivators could be influenced by Axis through his god of chi. He was playing the long game. Yvrain knelt at once and offered blessings to the god she worshipped. Congratulations, great Yniad, she said. Yniad had grown stronger and now could walk openly in the real universe. That diminished Yvrain's role as great seer somewhat. If the god himself could act in the real world, he wouldn't need a mouthpiece. But that was of little consequence. After she married the human gene seed Primarch Robert Guilliman, she would withdraw from the Death Guard and become, in truth, Regent Princess of the Imperium. Besides, in Yniad she had an even greater, sturdier ally. Yvrain turned and looked at Axis. Thank you, Your Highness Axis. I cannot express my gratitude. If there is any way I can repay you, name it. Ennead, having tested the power of his new body, now wanted to cultivate favor with Axis. He envisioned acquiring more of Axis's mental tree fruit to further upgrade his divine form. So when Axis made a request, Ennead listened closely. "There is one thing I require, great Ennead," Axis said. "I once obtained a fragment of Kala Mensha Kine's godhood. I devoured one such fragment and wish to consume the rest. Will you collect the remaining fragments of Kala Mensha Kine for me?" Those fragments were essential for Axis to master the god of power and ascend to a subspace lesser god. Without them, Axis would not have risen so far in 300 years by leaning only on the divine power of the Emperor and Khorne. "No problem, Your Highness Axis," Ennead replied without hesitation. "I will gather every fragment of Kala Mensha Kine and hand them to you. I will take care of it personally." How could something dead for over 10,000 years, consisting only of scattered fragments and propped up by a great seer's sacrifice, be more valuable than winning Axis's favor? Axis laughed. "You are straightforward, great Ennead. In that case, about the mental tree fruit I gave Yvraine, I will give you 10 of them, plus one of even higher quality as a gift." "That would be marvelous, Your Highness Axis. We have an accord. Once I am fully accustomed to this body, I will lead the Death Guard into action," Ennead said. As the only Eldar god who could operate in the real universe, Ennead now stood as the supreme authority of the Eldar. His first task would be to unify the Eldar people, Exodites, Craftworld Eldar, Dark Eldar, all under his command. As for the ragtag troop led by a certain filial god, they were allies for now. After all, the other party was also a god. Axis and Ennead got on well during their ensuing conversation, and the Eldar god's favor toward Axis rose steadily. Outside Mechraj, the battle raged on. The awakening of the Gene Seed Primarch reinvigorated the Ultramarines. When Guilliman strode onto the field wearing the armor of fate and wielding the sword of the Emperor, the human forces erupted in cheers. "The great Gene Father has awakened. The Lord of the Ultramarines lives. Hail the great Gene Father. Hail Ultramar, King of 500 worlds." Ultramarines and allied troops alike shouted their allegiance, tears in the eyes of mortal soldiers who beheld a godlike giant descend among them. To mortals, the era of the Gene Seed Primarchs and the Emperor was legend and myth, yet here, a son of God from those tales stood before them. "Ultramarines, counterattack! Destroy these traitors! Citizens of the Imperium, fight bravely! The Emperor watches!" Guilliman roared, raising the sword of the Emperor. Chaos Warmaster Abaddon and his followers realized their plan had failed. Their attempt to stop the awakening of the Lord of the Ultramarines had collapsed. Guilliman charged like a living siege engine, his blade cutting down a score of Chaos Space Marines, and with monstrous strength, crushing a Khorne Greater Daemon in his hands until it ceased to be. Most of the Chaos ranks trembled. Daemons and corrupted Marines alike saw the giant and felt their courage evaporate. Some Khorne devotees, however, remained undeterred. If anything, they hungered to spill Guilliman's blood as an offering to the blood god. But many greater daemons kept their distance. Wielding the sword of the Emperor meant they risked utter annihilation. Any daemon slain by that blade faced complete eradication with no chance of return. Those daemons who dared not touch Guilliman turned their attention to the two seemingly ordinary figures at his side. They appeared ordinary, but standing beside a Primarch, their status could not be low. A great unclean one of Nurgle lurched forward toward one of them, Kratos, with a roar of rot and pus. Kratos watched the lumbering monstrosity with a faint, almost bored expression. The daemon clearly thought him an easy target. The assumption was grievously wrong. Golden light blossomed from Kratos' body as he unleashed his psychic might, an eruption of power that resembled the legendary Super Saiyan transformation. His fist struck the great unclean one squarely. The daemon's bloated husk burst like an overfilled bladder, a fountain of viscera and flesh. The explosion vaporized the creature utterly, body and soul undone. "Die, monster," Kratos said coldly, and a surge of golden psychic energy washed the battlefield. The ruined daemon vanished in a wail of disbelief. He had expected relief from Guilliman, but he had encountered something far more final. The display of Kratos' power sent a ripple of fear through the Chaos ranks. Who was this man who could utterly annihilate daemons without weapons, solely by will and psychic force? They had no file on him. How could they have missed someone like this? Kratos did not stop. The golden light shifted in character. It was no longer raw psychic force, but holy radiance. He rose into the air like a blazing sun, a column of warmth and light pouring from him. Low-grade daemons in range burned away into ash. The light had another effect. Mortals who had been exhausted or grievously wounded found their injuries knitting and their strength returning. Space Marines felt their own combat prowess heightened as if some holy hand lifted them. Soldiers murmured that it felt like a blessing from the Emperor himself, but Guilliman, who watched Kratos closely, was struck by a subtle difference. The Emperor's power, though golden, carried a dark, cool edge. Kratos' light, by contrast, was like a hot spring, warm, nurturing, deeply sacred. "This is holy light," Kasha said, stepping up beside Guilliman. "A power developed from Sanguinius in our universe." Guilliman's eyes softened. "This is extraordinary, as if an archangel stands with us. How is Sanguinius now?" "You will meet him soon," Kasha replied. With that, Guilliman's relief turned to resolve. "In that case, warriors of the Imperium, slay the enemy." Bathed in holy light, humanity surged forward with renewed vigor. The tide of battle turned. Hope and strength flowed back into the ranks under the warmth of that golden blessing. Chapter 339, Awakening the Power of the Holy Light, Poor Guilliman and the Dark Empire. "My warriors, remember the man before you. He bears the human emperor's blood. My nephew, the true grandson of the human emperor. His name is Kratos." Reboot Guilliman raised his weapon and announced Kratos' identity to every mortal and space marine within earshot. It was vital to make Kratos' lineage plain. His combat prowess and the power he wielded made him look more like a gene seed Primarch, or even a son of the God Emperor, than Guilliman himself. Without a clear name and place, some would exploit the situation, so Guilliman declared it openly for all to hear. "For the Emperor's bloodline," he cried. "For the great Kratos," shouted thousands in answer. "Warriors of the Empire, victory belongs to us. Glory belongs to the human Emperor." Kratos answered by pouring forth the holy light. He manifested a pair of great angelic wings, each over 20 meters across, and took to the sky, visible to every soldier on the field. The living Saint Celestine flew to his side, sword in hand, fighting beside her betrothed. "For the human Emperor, purge these chaos demons," Celestine said, nodding at Kratos. She was proud of him. The light he bore was more sacred and potent than anything she had ever felt. "Thank you, great Emperor," she thought. "I will follow your bloodline to the ends of the galaxy." "Fight! Fight! Warriors, fight!" A surge of energy rolled through the Ultramarines, righteous, pure-hearted veterans feeling something awaken within them. After facing Kratos' holy light on the field, many eligible Space Marines finally kindled that same power inside themselves. Since Sanguinius first manifested the holy light in this universe, its use by others required his consent. As Sanguinius flew through the warp toward the Baal system, he felt the call of the light from Macragge, from the steadfast, the loyal, the fearless souls who would fight to the end for the Empire. He spread his golden wings in the void and cast specks of holy light across the warp to Macragge, awakening those hearts. Then, with a final beat, he leapt toward Baal, sensing also a familiar, lingering echo of himself in the warp. A dead self trying, in whatever small way he could, to protect his gene-seed children. The battle ended in a crushing victory for humanity. The Chaos Fleet was almost annihilated. Only a handful of Chaos Warlocks and Daemons escaped Macragge. Kratos' holy light had even suffused some Space Marines' weapons, giving them terrifying effectiveness against demonic flesh. Those Space Marines who had awakened the light became instruments of purification in their own right. When they struck, Daemons did not return. The holy light now finished them, utterly and irreversibly. Macragge erupted. Cheers rolled like thunder across the planet. The Ultramarines had defended their home. Their gene-seed Primarch, Reboot Guilliman, had awakened after 10,000 years. "We won. We won this war," voices thundered. Guilliman rode the victory. He publicly recognized Kasha, Axis, Kratos, and others as members of the human Emperor's bloodline, the new generation of gene-seed Primarchs, the Emperor's daughter and grandson. Their emergence would reshape the Empire. He immediately sent word across the Ultramar 500 worlds. The news would spread further still. Over the following weeks, Guilliman met with leaders across his domain. met his gene seed offspring, and tried to piece together what had become of the Imperium in his 10,000-year sleep. What he learned broke his heart. This was a terrible age, corrupt, dark, and theocratic. The imperial truth he had once helped impose, there are no gods, had been abandoned. A state religion had risen, and the human emperor himself had been worshipped as a god for 10,000 years. Guilliman could hardly believe it. He found himself bitterly wishing it had been him who had died, not Sanguinius. Perhaps then Sanguinius would be the one cleaning up this mess, or the one betrothed to the Eldar seer. The corruption and hypocrisy of the present Imperium were everything he had feared. At length, he called Axis into his private chamber to discuss urgent matters. "Axis," Guilliman said, "my marriage to that Eldar woman will likely be delayed. I have duties that cannot wait. I must launch an expedition to Holy Terra, receive my father's inheritance, and take rightful command of the Imperium. There is a mountain of work ahead. Weddings will have to wait a century or two." Axis smiled. "What's so hard about that? Get the wedding ready now. We'll marry in 3 days, right here on Macragge. Let your people celebrate. Then we use the Eldar webway straight to Holy Terra. You get there fast and safe." Axis's tone was light, but the plan was sound. If Guilliman married the Great Seer, the webway access would be open. No bloody march across space, no slaughter on the way. Guilliman thought of the old timeline, traveling to Terra with most of his host cut down, arriving nearly alone, and even being captured by Huron Blackheart. A child of his own line rising in 2 centuries to seize Guilliman. What a bitter thought. In Axis's teasing, there was also pity. This Guilliman was weaker than the Guilliman of other tales. He lacked the holy light, the spirit tree's fruit, the ruthless single-mindedness that might have made him invincible. "You don't understand, Axis," Guilliman protested. "If this is a marriage alliance, there are better matches than me. As a gene seed Primarch, if I marry an alien, how will my gene seed offspring see me?" "You'll teach them," Axis replied with a grin. "You don't know it, but there's already a human-Eldar hybrid on Macragge. After they see you, maybe some Ultramarines will start looking for Eldar girls of their own." "This is not the time for jokes," Guilliman snapped. "The whole Imperium is in peril. We must use the webway and lead the Ultramarines to Terra quickly and safely. So get married." "Why are you so stubborn?" Guilliman muttered into his hands. "Damn it, I wish it had not been me to wake. Why not someone else? Or bring back other Primarchs? Or let another Sanguinius take my place?" Axis's patience snapped into action in the only way Axis really knew how, with a grin and a punch. He launched into his antics, the blows named as much in jest as in truth. "Rosen Shoryu Ha!" Guilliman rocketed upward, followed by Pegasus Ryusei Ken. He flew backward like a kite with a broken string, slammed down, winded and furious. Axis laughed, hands on hips. Guilliman spat a word, then could not help a faint, grudging smile. War, duty, weddings, none of it would be simple. But the road to Terra had been set, and the Empire would soon know that someone old and stern had finally returned to take the reins. Chapter 340. The Empire is sick, and we need to take drastic measures. Just kill them outright. How strong was Axis, and how strong was Guilliman? The difference in combat power was staggering. Facing Axis, Guilliman couldn't even react. He couldn't read his opponent's moves before being sent sprawling. He crashed hard to the floor, pressed back into the ground, and struggled to raise his head. He stared at Axis in disbelief. What was this? Hadn't Axis said he came to the underground training room to have a heart-to-heart? What kind of heart-to-heart was this? Beating him up. "Guilliman, I'm going to use my fists to talk some sense into you and get you back to normal." Axis hauled him upright and punched the Gene Seed Primarch in the face. A left hook cracked against his jaw, a right hook slammed into his lower abdomen, and a swing sent him tumbling to the floor again. "Do you think this is a game?" Axis spat as he stepped on Guilliman's face. "Do you know how much pain and suffering your father, rotting on the golden throne, has endured for 10,000 years? I bet if you were to sit on that throne, you wouldn't last a day. Do you think you're the only one struggling? Look at your Gene Seed children. Look at the people of the Ultramar 500 worlds. Everyone looks to you for leadership. If you give up and break everything, why should I bother fixing it? Maybe I should take my wife, son, and daughter-in-law and go back to my own world to enjoy life while your rotting Imperium collapses. You, Guilliman forced the words out between gritted teeth. I will save this tragic Imperium. I see the people of Ultramar. They aren't like 10,000 years ago. They've never had the orderly, beautiful life of the past, and yet they endure. How does that justify me marrying an Eldar Great Seer? He spat blood onto the floor. The idea of marrying an Eldar, a death god Great Seer no less, still felt absurd to him. That's because we need the Eldar's power. We need the Eldar's help. You should have gathered some intelligence in the last few days. Abaddon has launched the 13th Black Crusade. Warp energy from the Eye of Terror is leaking across the galaxy. Half the Imperium is shrouded in darkness. Contact is lost in many places. To reach those dark zones, the Eldar Webway is the best route. Axis explained. It's just an alliance. Why must I intermarry? Guilliman said. Don't you see how much this would damage the Imperium's reputation? If an intermarriage is necessary, I can choose a noble within the Imperium. Axis laughed coldly. Do you think some mortal noble who lives a few hundred years is worthy of a great seer who can live thousands? How will the Eldar view us then? Will they believe humans are sincere? Will they grant us webway access? Guilliman opened his mouth and found himself unable to answer. He wanted to say others could be chosen, but the facts were against him. Axis and his family were not from this world. His father had made clear they would leave again. Axis's son Kratos had married an Imperial living saint because the Emperor wanted to forge a bond with Axis. Axis's return would mean he needed Eldar help, and convincing the Imperium would be the problem. Ultramar and most Space Marines, his own gene seed offspring, would accept it, but what about other chapters and, worse, Holy Terra? You're not considering the upper ranks of the Imperium, Axis said with a cold snort, watching Guilliman's hesitation. That's right. We can't ignore the opinions of the mortal ruling class. If I married an alien, it wouldn't be a simple thing. There would be countless complications, Guilliman admitted. The reason the Imperium has decayed is those nobles, the so-called rulers, who wrecked it. Axis gave an example. A world sends a distress call for an orc invasion. What shows up isn't a relief fleet, but a tax collector. They take the planet's last ammunition and supplies. Guilliman tried to defend it. Perhaps it's for a greater plan. Some sacrifice is inevitable. Axis stared him down. The tax collectors thought that too. The local soldiers thought so. The commissar stayed behind to make a stand while they took the weapons. Do you know what happened to those supplies? They were hauled to a tax reserve planet and left for decades. The stockpiles rotted and were destroyed. Meanwhile, the besieged planet needed them desperately. The statisticians treated humans like numbers. Throw them away. That's the reality. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. Guilliman's face went ashen. He opened his mouth, but no defense came. This Imperium is sick, Axis said. It needs strong medicine. You must purge internal corruption, overthrow all opposition, and seize absolute power. Kill the dissenters. Your marriage will cause a backlash, but you are the son of the God Emperor, the Imperial Regent. Raise your butcher's knife. Kill until the rivers run red, until no one dares to object, until a single voice rules the Imperium. The words hit Guilliman like a cold slap. Axis's solution was simple and brutal. Remove the rotten leadership by force. Guilliman had seen enough in the last few days to know the Imperium was rotten to the core. Axis's drastic measures, as extreme as they were, had a wicked logic to them. It will take an enormous military force. The Ultramar 500 worlds aren't enough. I command only a little over 1,000 Space Marines right now, Guilliman said. Then rip up that roll of toilet paper you wrote, Axis snapped. Restore the Legion system and reforge the Ultramarines. Lead hundreds of thousands of Space Marines to Holy Terra, and every objection will vanish. You mean undo the Codex Astartes? Guilliman was incredulous. I wrote it. It was meant to prevent power consolidation, to stop warlords from rising. Your codex is a problem. Chapters of 1,000 are no longer suitable. The galaxy is at war. We need legions again. With one word, you could call up hundreds of thousands of your gene seed offspring. And don't forget Belisarius' call. He's been preparing for this. He has hundreds of thousands of Primaris Marines in reserve. Axis watched Guilliman closely. During his time on Macragge, Axis had met with the High Magos and learned of Call's stockpiles. Primaris Marines, taller, faster, stronger, engineered for war. With Call's reserves and the Ultramarine successor, chapters that obey Guilliman's command, assembling an army of 1,000,000 Space Marines to march on Holy Terra was feasible. That kind of movement would alert the High Lords. They'd call other chapters to arms, and a civil war would erupt, Guilliman protested. That's why you need the Eldar webway. Take them to Holy Terra without anyone knowing and cut down those High Lords one by one. Don't waste time arguing. Their existence only consumes resources at Terra's expense. Axis's voice was cold and pragmatic. Kill them and be done with it. Guilliman looked at him, thinking. The more he considered it, the more Axis's words struck home. 10,000 years of corruption had hollowed out the Imperium. Perhaps only a ruthless purge would save it. Reluctant as he was to abandon the principles behind the Codex, he had to admit it no longer fit this era. Besides, Axis continued, the Blood Angels will help. My friend is arriving with the Blood Angels' gene stock. Even if it's a Sanguinius from another world, his command over Sanguinius's children won't be much less than your own Sanguinius. Chapter Master Dante had gathered nearly 30,000 Blood Angels to resist the Tyrannid. Sanguinius's gene stock had been drawn together. If this other Sanguinius arrived, the Blood Angels' Legion could be rebuilt, and those trapped in the Death Company might be redeemed and returned to the Legion. You're right, Guilliman conceded at last, though it cost him. This Imperium needs saving. These parasites need to be excised. The Codex Astartes, maybe it has become obsolete. I hate admitting it, but it's true. Then act, Axis urged, nodding. Macragge has gathered many Ultramarine successor chapters. Rebuild and gather their forces. Have Call release his frozen Primaris. Marry the Eldar Great Seer, secure their aid, and use the webway to take the High Lords at Terra by surprise. Guilliman offered a wry, bitter smile. I'll need at least 2 days' rest. You hit me hard. Save your breath, Axis snorted. A golden holy light flared in his palm and flowed into Guilliman. The light and life energy combined to knit flesh and bone. What had seemed like brutal blows had left only superficial damage and a few fractures, no fatal internal injuries. The holy light restored him in moments. It's incredible, this power, the holy light, Guilliman said as he flexed his limbs. Some of my Ultramarines have shown signs of it in the last few days. Can I learn to master it? Of course, Axis replied, but not yet. You're too politically burdened. You're not a man awakened through virtue and righteousness, so you can't cultivate the light alone. When Sanguinius arrives, I'll have him plant a holy light seed within you. Then you'll be able to use it. I look forward to meeting Sanguinius, Guilliman said softly. The Sanguinius in question came from another world, but that mattered little to him. He had missed a brother in arms. On the Baal battlefield, Chapter Master Dante had assembled nearly 30,000 Blood Angels and dozens of Chapter Masters at the Angel Fortress, Sanguinius's old gathering place. Though they were all the heads of chapters now, Dante, as Lord of the parent chapter, held precedence. He had to find a way to bring all of Sanguinius's gene seed offspring under a single command. As Dante spoke with the assembled Chapter Masters, a golden light suddenly descended. All of Sanguinius's gene seed offspring felt it, a surge, a rhythm within their blood. A shared blood connection flared through every warrior.